I actually dropped out of high school. I was a terrible student my whole life.
At what year?
Well, I did 4 years of high school, and I was a sophomore when I left.
Wow.
So I failed basically half of high school. But I stayed there for the girls, and...
It's the only reason I went, because they wore tight pants, and I'm like, I'm going to go and look at some asses today. Good afternoon, everybody. So excited for this. We've got Dr. Kirk Parsley, MD, an actual MD. Like, I'm talking to some real people. I mean, Mark Sisson, Dr. Parsley. I've got, Nate Harris. I mean, real professionals on this goddamn podcast. We're not playing games over here at Pirate Life. Dr. Kirk Parsley, he's an ex-Navy SEAL. I don't know if you're ex. Are you always a Navy SEAL when you're a Navy SEAL? Anyway, I've got to find out. I'm going to have to ask Andy Stump for something. But at any rate, he became what they call the sleep doc. You can find him at Doc Parsley, DocParsley.com. And Doc Parsley, I mean, I'll let him tell the story, but it is a phenomenal story about hormone supplementation, and also how those things are very much diminished if you're not getting appropriate sleep, and how that throws your whole system out of whack. And here's another guy that has been told no. Like, he wanted to attack certain symptoms that the SEAL teams were having when he became the doctor of the SEAL teams. And they were all having similar problems. And he wasn't able to attack those. But what opened up was a whole different conversation with the root of it. And my favorite quote out of this, he said they all had sleep problems. He said, but I knew one thing was for sure. Because they were all on Ambien. They all got prescribed Ambien. And he goes, I know one thing's for sure. They sure didn't have an Ambien deficiency. And you think about that in light of pharmaceutical companies and all the prescriptions that are going on today. And he's got a radical approach, and he's a beautiful, beautiful dude. Jiu-jitsu guy, friends with Jocko Willink. I think they trained together down in San Diego, and just great people, man. So DocParsley.com, check him out. I just ordered all of his sleep remedy. So if you can get some, it's probably scarce because I ordered a ton of it because it works awesome. I've tried it a few times, and what a great product he's got. And he's another guy that made a product that he didn't want to have as a product. All he wanted to do was to help these few Navy SEALs that were out there. And he said, I made an oath to them. I promised them that I would make it so I could put it out so they could always have it. And then now it's on the market, and it's something that he's doing, and he tours, and he's just loads and loads of information. Fantastic. So anyway, please, let's get to that. Let's get this out of the way. I want to really encourage everybody to help yourself. Go to float and really get deep into that. Do about a 90-minute float. If you can stand it, do it 3 or 4 times a week. And I'm talking about isolation tanks. If you can get into an isolation tank at like the Float Clinic down in Torrance, man, those are my friends down there. They have a great place. Wherever they have, look up isolation tanks, flotation tanks. Whew, it's life-changing, man. It helps with meditation on both ends of the day, clearing out spinal decompression. Your body feels great. And I think that it's really good to be well-balanced, and you got to reach for these different things. So that's one thing that I can't say enough good things about. And those guys down at the Float Clinic down in Torrance, they're rad. They really do it right. I'm going to figure out how to get it in my house. I've got to do that. Anyway, CavemanCoffee.com. Please hit them up. We're now available in Australia for all of you beautiful Aussies out there. It's CavemanCoffee.com.au, I believe. And man, we're so proud to be out there, and the kind of response that we've gotten has been second to none. And thank you all so goddamn much. And yeah, it's really inspiring to see how this is taken off. So cavemancoffee.com, check us out. A lot of great stuff happening. Also, if you could look at nuevocerveza.com and follow us on Instagram, we've got some big stuff going on. We've got a coffee shop, tap room, and mercantile that's going to be opening in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we have some limited items that will only be available there. Like we just mixed an amber ale and our white gold coffee, and we kegged it, and the people that drink say it is phenomenal, that it's awesome, that it's almost like a nitro coffee with a good alcohol content. So anyway, if you're into that kind of thing and you're in Santa Fe, come by for a beer or a coffee. All I'm doing is drinking coffee. I want to also thank all my friends over at On It. They help us out so much, and they've been so lovely to us, man. I love the collaboration that we're doing, and the help that Aubrey's putting into the world is really phenomenal, I think. And just, trying to get the best stuff out there to people that can be encouraged to live better lives and to reach a little higher than they thought they could. And that's the biggest thing is to be able to, how do we get into the try? How do we get into this try business better? And I love that there's tutorials out there online now that On It does. They have a plethora of articles of mayhem, from kettlebells to maces to battle ropes, whatever you need. And I take Alpha Brain not as directed. I don't know, it's a little secret, but I take 6 of them before I go to bed at night, and it is fucking fantastic. Nearly lucid dreaming, and I practice at that a bit, but also I just wake up hella refreshed. I sleep great through the night, and it's fantastic. And that's what this episode is about. It's about sleep. So, with no more fuckery to talk about, I'm going to go ahead and just turn this over. And this is a great podcast recorded at Paleo FX, which is a fantastic forum, and I hope to be headlining it next year. And it's Doc Parsley, and I fuck his name up a bunch in the beginning of this because it was a long weekend and I'd had a lot of coffee and I'd met a lot of people. So, my apologies, Doc Parsley, but goddamn thank you, and I can't wait to talk to you again, sir. All right. Enjoy, people. It's Pirate Life Podcast, and it's starting now.
A big Tait Fletcher.
Powerful Tait Fletcher
is a real alpha male.
Weightlifter.
He's a stuntman.
Movie star.
Robust, enthusiastic individual.
He's huge, by the way. He's like a monster person.
One of the sweetest guys I know.
He's bigger than life.
Actor.
Entrepreneur.
A fighter.
The jiu-jitsu technician.
He's also bald and he has all these tattoos. He's just a big fucking man.
A man, a myth, a legend.
Tait Fletcher.
Tait Fletcher.
Tait Fletcher.
What's up, Tait Fletcher, you bad motherfucker?
Tait Fletcher. Tait Fletcher is
Tait Fletcher.
Teddy bear motherfucking Fletcher, ladies and gentlemen.
That's Tait Fletcher, everybody.
The great Tait Fletcher. Tait the animal Fletcher. Tait the savage Fletcher. Always moving. There's no stillness with Tait Fletcher. You will find no dust.
Tait Fletcher's in the house, ladies and gentlemen. He just said the word erection.
Tait Fletcher.
Tait Fletcher's in the fucking house. Tait Fletcher!
Tait really blasts out some serious hardcore truth bombs, and I think you're really going to enjoy it.
Hey everybody, welcome to Pirate Life Radio. This is Tait Fletcher, and we're at Paleo FX in their final days, and we have here with us my partners Keith Jardine, Lacey Mackey, and Dr. Kirk Parsley is joining us today. Parsley,
you got it. You got it.
And I'm super interested just to hear about your background because it's so wide-reaching. And where did you first start off to get into this conversation? Because like you started out of high school, you joined the Navy out of high school, is that right?
Yeah, I got out of high school. I actually dropped out of high school. I was a terrible student my whole life.
At what year?
Well, I did 4 years of high school, and I was a sophomore when I left.
Wow.
So I failed basically half of high school.
This is a great story
but
already.
I stayed there for the girls, and...
it's the only reason I went, because they wore tight pants, and I'm like, I'm going to go and look at some asses today.
Chase chicks around, race cars, get in fights,
Crazy.
just a typical... redneck white boy out in the country. And
where were you?
I grew up in Katy, Texas.
Okay.
And actually my boxing coach was the Marine recruiter in my hometown, and he was always like, recon. And I was like, recon.
Would he push you guys as students of his to join?
He wanted us.
He wanted to militarize everybody.
Us all to be in the Marines, right? And I was like, yeah, cool. And Heartbreak Ridge movie came out right around that
awesome
time, and
movie.
I was like, yeah, recon,
killing it,
badass. But I knew all the recruiters. A very small town, very small office, and this Navy guy's like. The Navy recruiter's like, hey man, I got a guy in my office you should meet. He's a Navy SEAL, which is a different kind of special forces. And I'd read about him in a book before, and I'm like, okay, let me go talk to this dude. And he started, of course, there's the rivalry between all special forces, and he starts going, recon, a bunch of, what.
And now there's a bunch of crossovers, though. There's guys I know that are Delta Force that went and joined the SEALs.
Yeah, tons of crossover now. And it's because now we're under JSOC, like this Joint Special Operations Command, where it's all being commanded by the same sort of leadership with the same overall goal.
Great. So anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's an integration now. And so, anyways, he introduced me to this SEAL in his office, and I talked to the guy for a few hours, and he kept driving about how this is the toughest training in the world. And then about 2 months later, this documentary called, there was a show called 48 Hours. I don't know if you remember that. It was like, it's kind of like 60 minutes.
It's like a documentary. Went in and intensive into like whether you're an undercover cop or
right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so they covered SEAL training. And this happened literally like 2 months after I talked to that guy. And I was sold. Like, they covered this Bud's class and how hard it was and all these people quitting, and I'm like, that's what I'm gonna go do, man. So I dropped out of high school, kind of like when all my friends were graduating, I was like, all right, I'm done. And I went and got a GED, and I joined the Navy, and I went off to SEAL training.
My cousin went at 16 and to become a force recon guy.
Yeah, I was 17 when I left. I was 18 by the time I started training.
Now, did you, like, in your head, did you feel like diminished at all, or did you feel like, oh, I'm never going to do anything because I've spent all this time and I'm not succeeding in the way other kids are succeeding, or the way everybody tells me that this is the path you have to take? Or was there any of that stuff? Because you're talking about just right before you go into maybe the hardest thing that humans do.
So pretty interesting. I mean, it's much worse than that. So I had this father or stepfather who was an undercover narcotics agent. He was the world's biggest prick, as far as I know. I mean, to this day, I've never met anybody who compares to the guy.
Really?
Hate the man. Like,
we're not talking about
the worst person I've ever met in my life.
We're not talking about just somebody that was like, oh, he's rough on me and he instituted discipline. No. It's not that kind of party. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Like the guy who's like constantly mentally and physically tormenting, beating, abusing you, your mother, your sister, your brother.
Wow.
Horrible shit, right? And
God.
I felt like I was the man of the family before he came along, right? I was 8, right? So, but I still felt like, it's my job to protect the women, and then this guy comes and beats me down, and I felt like a total pussy because I couldn't, I'm not protecting my mom and my sister. He outweighed me by 200 pounds, so it probably wasn't, reasonable, but that's the way the brain thinks. And so this guy's constantly beat me down, like, you're an idiot, you're a moron, look at your grades, you're never going to become anything, you're probably gay, just like anything to get in my head. Beat me down. So that drove me a lot in SEAL training. I was just like, I'm going to show this motherfucker what's up.
You could thank him in a way.
Yeah,
he got you through it.
Yeah. You could spin it that way, but I choose not to.
Yeah, that son of a bitch.
Because I don't want to give that prick credit for it.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. But it wasn't really so much that I'm going to prove him wrong to him.
Right.
I'm going to prove him wrong to me.
And it's
because I bought into the shit. I thought I was stupid.
And no wonder that you didn't succeed in school. Like, fuck, who succeeds under that kind of?
And I remember my third grade teacher telling me in front of the entire class that I was the stupidest student she had ever trained.
Damn.
And I'm just like, okay, I'm stupid. And so I went through school just thinking I was incapable of getting good grades.
Right.
And then when I got in the Navy, you have to do a bunch of academic stuff to do your jobs in the Navy. Right. And I was at the top of every class I was ever in.
Did you know that you wanted to be a SEAL when you signed up?
Yeah, I joined to be a SEAL.
Okay. I've got a question about that I ask everybody.
Hit it up.
You fucking go in, you watch Navy SEAL, you watch Charlie Sheen or whatever the thing is, and you go in and you're like, I want to do some Navy SEAL shit.
Yeah.
And you sign up to the Navy, and then you're like, fuck, didn't make it, and now I'm just in the Navy. Is that ever scary? Like, fuck, I don't want to wash the deck of a boat for forever.
It's even worse. It's even worse than that, right? So the way SEAL training used to be before they became these quasi-celebrities is you joined the Navy, and then while you're in boot camp, some SEALs came by and said, "Hey, we're SEALs. This is what we do. Do you want to try out?" And you do this little screening test, which is stupid. And it's like a 1.5 mile run, a little swim, a little push-up.
Right.
Like you have to be like in reasonable shape to pass it. Right. It's nothing taxing.
And reasonably tough.
It wasn't some kind of big ass deal. Like 99% of fit guys could do it if they worked at it.
And what's the percentage of guys that succeed that sign up to go to Buds?
From like sign up to graduation is like 95% fail.
Holy fuck.
For your actual SEAL training, like once you get to SEAL training, once you get to Coronado and Buds, it's about an 80 to 85% fail rate. So you wash some guys out before they even get there. And then once they get to the teams, there's a few more that will wash out after they've completed training because they just don't fit socially or whatever with the group. But they have, some behavioral issues that get in the way. God. So anyways, I took all these classes in the Navy. I graduated in the top of my class, kept getting all these awards, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm not dumb after all, So and then when I was in the SEAL teams, I was known as like the smart guy. They're like, hey, guys, Buck, he'll know. Sorry,
you're good.
Everybody has nicknames, and so my nickname was Buck, and they'd be like, go ask Buck, man, he'll know that. Like he knows everything. I'm like, really? I think I'm an idiot. So anyways, I was a SEAL way before 9/11, so pretty much all we did was train and deploy. And when we deployed, we maybe do a little bit of police action here and there. It's during the Clinton administration.
That was a pretty mellow time for our country.
Very, very mellow.
The Clinton administration
we had the Iraq War, the first Iraq War, which was I don't know, like 3 bullets were fired.
Yeah,
or something.
7 days or whatever it was.
And we would train other special forces, but we wouldn't really train them. You're taking a kindergartner to the 3rd grade level or something.
You're like, let's go do that, and then we'll get some beers.
Yeah. So, it was a fun job. It was a good place to spend my 20s, but it wasn't super rewarding. There was no higher purpose kind of to it.
Right.
And it just didn't feel like it was on the horizon, that it was ever coming in.
That it was going to get hot.
Yeah, we're just thinking we were all thinking we're never going to actually go to war, man.
That's what all the guys, one of my buddies, he was one of the guys that got called, Mark Stefanich, and he got called to be in SEAL Team 6 at the advent of SEAL Team 6. But he's like, there's nothing really going on. We just train a lot. And I know a couple of guys that are like that in the late 80s, early 90s, and they're just like, there's just like, there's no fun time or whatever. And then you talk to the guys that were in hot war, and they said, even during this latest war, there's so many SEALs that there's only some teams that see any action. They see a lot, and they get repetitive. But if you
weren't with like Jocko's Task Force Bruiser or something like that.
Andy Stump saw a lot of
Stump's a great dude too.
Yeah, God, he is.
There's and Dep Group, gets the vast majority of this stuff, but there's plenty of team augmentation, and lots of guys see action. But like you said, man, a lot of guys might get some sort of indirect fire or non-effective fire, or maybe an RPG goes off next to them, an IED like close to them or something. But there's a lot of guys who still don't see a lot of action. So it's not like we all thought of when we were kids, the Vietnam sort of picture of combat. But yeah, I just figured, it was kind of a young single man's game, and the training was really redundant. We went to the same places. We deployed to the same places. And it wasn't that it was bad. It was just like, I want to go to do something bigger. I want to do something more. And then I actually was planning on being a physical therapist, and I started working at a physical therapy clinic, started volunteering to get my volunteer hours to be able to apply. Started college.
This is while you were an active SEAL?
The last few months of the active SEAL, and then right after the SEAL teams. And then they hired me right away as an assistant, and I started working, and pretty quickly decided I didn't want to be a physical therapist. I'm like, too limited for me.
Right.
But it was like this healthcare mecca, right? We had like every professional,
and you were in California at that time.
This was San Diego Sports Medicine Center, and we worked with several doctors, and I really got on well with the doctors, and the doctors are like, you should become a doctor. And I'm like, I can't become a doctor. I'm a freaking high school dropout. Like, are you kidding me? Like, there's no way I'm becoming a doctor. And they're like, what are your grades in college right now? I'm like, I have a 4.0. And they're like, well, then you can be a doctor.
So
just keep going. And so, so I had to do 5 years of college because I had to do a year to make up for high school.
Well, the thing that sticks out to me that's amazing is that, like, you think of all the perfunctory stuff that we do in high school that's just kind of to set a base.
Right.
You probably didn't have any of that, but you're still able to perform at this high level in the Navy and then later in college.
Yeah, and it was really just like pure
So
grit.
what I'm saying is you're a fucking genius. Like it's an amazing,
Yeah,
that's
you
an
don't need all that.
amazing
I'm
thing.
a very atypically wired guy, which has turned out to my benefit in,
wow.
in what I've chosen to do. Yeah, for sure. And my first 4 years of college, I had a 4.0, and I let it slip a little my fifth year because I had already gotten into medical school. Did really well in college. Did okay in medical school. You really have, I was getting through it by working harder than everybody else. That's how I was getting good grades. I didn't have any academic skills whatsoever. I was just
And where were you in medical school?
I went to the military's medical school.
Okay, cool.
In Yusha. So I was already married, had kids. Made sense to have them pay me instead of me pay somebody else. And so,
Were you always interested in sleep studies, or did that come later?
No. That's a story on its own. I went to medical school, suffered all the way through that. I mean, it was the biggest beat down of my life. So really from the time I got out of the Navy, I did 5 years of college, and then I did 4 years of medical school, and then I did a year of post-grad, and then I did another year of hyperbaric medicine, and I slept about 5 hours a night maximum throughout that entire time. And I was a broken bag of shit. Like, I hope this is
Emotional.
It's fine.
Yeah.
We say all the words.
Okay, explain.
Yeah,
we
don't
use
worry,
all
yeah.
of them.
So I mean, I was a piece
Full
of shit.
vocabulary.
Like, I was just completely falling apart, and I was like 35 or something, and I was just like, it's done. I'm over. Like, I'm just really old and beaten down and weak and fat, and
Man just needed some sleep and a cup of coffee and a bit of
actually got diagnosed with ADD in medical school. And if you look at the symptoms of ADHD or ADD, and you look at the symptoms of sleep deprivation, they're identical. And I was working with this super, super experienced doctor. He's like 70 years old, brilliant dude. And he never once asked me how I was sleeping or how much I was sleeping. It just wasn't a topic.
Right.
And then when I got back to the SEAL teams as their doctor, SEALs, much like you guys, just lie to the healthcare professionals so you can get back in the fight, right? It's like, I'm not going to tell this dude I got shot. I'm going to hide it, right? And how are you doing? I'm fine. How you sleeping? I'm fine. How's your marriage? Fine. Like, how's that shoulder? Fine. Like,
Exactly.
yeah. And they just, okay, check, go back to work. But when I was there were still plenty of SEALs there that I was a SEAL with. So they knew me. They trusted me. They'd come in and go, all right, dude, let me tell you what's going on. And what
a fucking great opportunity for them.
Yeah.
Because I hear all those guys and they talk about it, they go, and especially any mental stuff, like which is what sleep is.
Exactly.
They go, if you cop to that, then they say, hey, we'll give you a leave. And especially they say if you're a leader of a team or in any kind of position, that they won't put you back in because then they can say, oh, well, he went to see a doctor for X, Y, or Z.
Right.
And so you put him back in, and if something happens, then the people will point to that in litigation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so you deny anybody the ability to get help and keep their job.
Yeah. And plus, it's just not a group that's good at being vulnerable at all, right?
Sure.
It's like that's what we're wired to do. Is
I broke my finger, but we're in it. That's what's happening.
We're completely self-sufficient people, and all we need is the guy on each side of us, and we're cool, man. But they would come in and be like, "All right, dude, let me tell you what's really going on." Like, I had these freaking anxiety attacks for no reason. Like, I have these like depressive episodes. I'm crying during Hallmark commercials. I have shitty sex drive. I have shitty motivation. I'm still getting up and going to work, still getting after it, but I don't feel like doing it. I'm not recovering. I'm getting weaker. I'm getting fatter.
So
I can't
instead of it being a joy to get going, it's now a struggle, and it's
now
like I
just
have
a
to do
grind.
it.
But it's a tough group of good dudes, right?
What you're describing to me is what you feel like when you're training for a fight. You're getting a few weeks up, you get really emotional, and the sex drive and all that.
It's just like it's all these hormonal changes from that super intense training and
huge
super
depletion.
adrenal function. And these guys have been in combat for 8 years by the time I'm their doctor. And honestly, I didn't have the slightest fucking clue how how to fix this. I'm like, I have no idea, because none of them had disease.
Right.
I did all these blood tests. There's no disease there. There's a lot of shit that's suboptimal, but there's no disease. So what do you do? As a doctor, I can't do anything. Technically, if it doesn't meet disease, then I shouldn't be treating it.
Now, when you're testing, you say you do all the blood work, you're testing hormonal levels and all that too, or does that not come up with the radar at that time?
I tested for all sorts of stuff. So the really lucky thing for me is
That's all right.
The great thing for me was that I was the doctor for the SEALs. And so I could call any expert in the world and be like, hey, I'm the doctor for the SEALs, and I read your book, and we're having some problems that seems like you could help us with. Could I come train with you? Or could I consult with you? Could I run patients past you? Could you train me? Every one of them were like, of course.
What time frame is this? What year is this?
This is 2009.
Okay.
Yeah. So I really just kind of dove into like functional and integrative medicine. I knew I couldn't give these guys prescription medications because it's all disqualifying, right? As soon as you give a guy a medication that he needs, he can't go out on a mission. Right? How's he going to go on patrol? What if he doesn't have his medications? He's going to fall apart. They won't let him work, right?
Kind of a blessing right there to force you to go on
So
that path.
it really forced me to learn a totally different way, which was nothing that I learned in medical school. In medical school, you learn how to recognize, identify, and treat disease. If it doesn't meet disease, you tell them to go see a psychiatrist or read a book or join a gym or whatever.
Yep.
We weren't taught anything about exercise, nothing about nutrition, nothing about sleep, nothing about stress. Just all disease. So my first postulate was, hey man, 8 years of combat, these guys are probably adrenally fatigued, right? So I start learning a lot about adrenal fatigue. That of course ties directly to sleep. So then I start learning a lot about sleep. And because I'm not all that smart, it took me like 100 patients coming in to tell me the exact same story before I caught on to this one little caveat where they said, oh, and I take Ambien every night when I go to sleep.
No shit.
And
wow.
Many of them took 2 to 3 times the recommended doses of Ambien, chased that down with 2 cocktails.
Of course.
And then they said, and then I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can't go back to sleep. So I just get up and I go to the gym and I work out really hard, so I'll be tired that night and I'll go back to sleep. And I'll say, how long have you been trying that? They're like, 5 years. I'm like, keep going, man. It's going to work today. You're on it. You're right on the precipice, man.
It becomes that thing of when you're like, I only got a hammer, and so everything looks like a nail.
Exactly. So they're just like trying to fatigue themselves into sleep.
Sure.
They're just becoming like, literally their labs look like 80-year-old men. So I started training with this one doctor who is, his name is Edward Lichten, and he's one of the first guys to ever do hormonal modulation on men. Started doing it like 50 years ago almost. And he's like, you got to do this whole panel. And it was 98 labs on this panel, right?
God damn.
And I'm like, okay. So he taught me what every lab was, why I wanted them, and so I started doing this full panel. The military caught onto this after a few years and were pretty pissed off because it cost like $3,000 every time I did this.
I was gonna say, that's expensive.
I had about 400 patients and I did this
almost like being in
10
school,
times
though.
a year. Yeah. And so I learned how to interpret all these panels, and I wanted to fix their hormones. I knew the hormones were making them feel bad, right? But the Navy's not about to let me give these guys hormones.
And what hormones in particular? Cortisol being jacked is diminishing.
Cortisol, this is not a lie. Like most doctors say, your labs are wrong or something. I had at least half a dozen SEALs that had unmeasurable cortisol. Unmeasurable in the morning and unmeasurable over 24 hours. And every doctor will say, well, he should be dead.
Meaning
no
that there's a certain scale of 1 to 10 and these guys are at 56 or something like that? Or?
No.
It's not there.
There's a scale of 1 to 80 and they're at 0. You can't measure it. No
it's so
cortisol
low that it's
whatsoever.
gone.
It's just like they're just running on fumes. Their testosterone, so I'd measure their testosterone, normal range being like 250
because I always thought that high cortisol was the problem.
Well, it goes both ways.
So you run out.
Acutely, if somebody comes to this door and starts shooting at us right now, our adrenals are going to ramp up. Cortisol is going to ramp up. It's going to
kill that guy. If he
it's going to be good. You guys will take him out.
We want to be in this booth is where we want to be.
But that sends us into fight or flight, and cortisol has a lot of positive effects. Mainly, one of the main things is that it mobilizes all of our glycogen stores, so it feeds our limbs so we can fight or flee or whatever, right? It also kind of shuts down our prefrontal cortex, makes us super impulsive, so that we don't think about stuff, we just react.
Right.
And there's lots of adrenaline, blood pressure increases, pupils dilate, all this stuff goes on. Acutely, cortisol is great. You get an infection, you get hurt. Acutely, cortisol is great. Chronically, cortisol starts breaking you, because for many reasons. One of the big reasons is that chronically high cortisol leads to chronic inflammation, leads to a lot of fungal disease, and it also leads to thyroid disorders. Okay. Because it interferes with the production of thyroid production. And then once you interfere with thyroid production and blood glucose, now you've screwed up insulin. Once you've screwed up insulin, you've screwed up every hormone in your body. And now it cascades into testosterone and estradiol levels and inflammatory markers and you name it. Anything, every metric was off. They might be in the normal range, but the things that are supposed to be high, they're in the lowest 10%. The things that should be low, they're in the highest 10%, right? They're just, but I send this guy to an endocrinologist, true story, 28-year-old guy. Normal testosterone, 250 to 1100. His testosterone is 251. He's 28. I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. That's not a normal testosterone. The way they determined that 250 to 1100 was what's called the Framingham study. You've heard of all the data we collected. The criteria were you had to be 19 or older, you had to have testicles, and you had to be alive. That was it. And if you fit those criteria, your testosterone developed that normal range. So who do you think had 250? The 85-year-old guy in the nursing home. The young 19-year-old athletic guy had 1100. And we know that's true, but they don't age adjust it because people use testosterone to cheat in sports. And so we don't want to get into that bag of worms, so we aren't going to age adjust this.
It's weird that they don't do it as to be an appropriate functioning human, you'd like to be at 750.
Right.
Or something like that they don't just say that across the board, regardless if you're 16 or if you're 100.
Right. I mean, it's oversimplification, but there's a Goldilocks zone for everything. There's the normal range.
You can be too high.
You can be too high.
Affect you adversely.
Yeah, you can be too high. You can be too low. On anything, any hormone.
Just to talk about myself for a second, because everyone's interested. My last fight, I got tested like it was below 1,000. It was like 900 or 800. I was so fatigued at that point from bad diet and all these things together. Like that's like he was like, I've never seen anything like this before.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, just to talk about that, but it's just similar, like this grinding metal, and I wasn't sleeping for nothing. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. All I had energy to do was muster up this training workout, and then I'd go to sleep and wait and eat and wait till the next one, and that was it, man.
And a lot of times the wake up is that horrible wake up with your heart racing and you're
sweaty.
And that's the worst. It feels like you're waking up out of terror, but you're not. There's no terror around, and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with me?
You lay in bed for 30 minutes until you can get out.
Yeah. So that's your adrenal hormones compensating for other things being off.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what your adrenal hormones you could think of as like the immune system for what's actually outside of your body. So dangerous stuff out here, your adrenals take care of that. But they also sense what's in your brain senses everything that's in there, and it's like, okay, we don't have enough energy. Let's kick the adrenals up, spark up some cortisol, raise the blood glucose, and raise the epinephrine and norepinephrine, which is adrenaline. But cortisol makes you more sensitive to adrenaline. So you're running high cortisol, and now you get a normal adrenaline bolus, and it feels like an adrenaline injection.
There's nothing worse than waking up like that.
You're freaking
you wake up out of zero to that, like out of a calm rest state or something like that, and you wake up, like, because I've been like that where you work into it, like through whatever's happening, and it's not a big deal and it doesn't last a long time, but like to wake up like that is a fucking awful feeling.
Yeah, for sure. And these guys were complaining about that exact same thing too. Like the SEALs were telling me that was one of their symptoms, very common.
And so this guy is 28. He's got 251.
Yeah, so he's got 251. I'm like, well, that sucks, man. There's something wrong. So I send him to endocrinology. Endocrinology looks at the 251 and goes, that's in the normal range.
The motherfuckers.
Sends him back and says, do nothing.
Oh man.
I'm like, are you kidding? I'm not going to do nothing.
Right.
But I can't give him testosterone, right? Because
especially in this case.
Yeah.
Because these are guys.
It wouldn't be the right thing to do anyway.
Their very life is at stake. The life of other men is that's fucking unconscionable.
And you're not going to put 200 pounds on your back and jump over walls and kick in doors and shoot people in the face with the testosterone of 251.
Yep.
It's not going to happen, man.
Not unless it's a nursing home.
Yeah. So these guys need more testosterone. They need more IGF-1.
I want them on all the shit.
The down product of growth hormone, IGF-1. They're low in that. Thyroid functions low, so they're not anabolic. They're not recovering. They can't get stronger. They can't get better. They're not sleeping well, which means they can't improve their skills because all skill is improved while you're sleeping.
Right.
Sleep drugs interfere with that.
It's like that thing about when you're disoriented or you're tired and you're just, 1 + 1 is 2, but you can't make the square fit into the hole, and like simple motor functions even get lost on you. Little puzzles
and very simple memory stuff.
Yep.
These guys constantly tell me. It takes me 5 times to get to work. I leave my house 5 times. I leave my house to get in my car. I go, oh, I forgot my badge. I get up and go back in my house. I get back in my car. I forgot my wallet. I get out and go back. And the five exits every day to get to where they're going. And then they pass their exit on the freeway. Right. They have to loop back around. They're like, I don't know. I'm just getting old.
That's not even to speak of their confidence.
Right, sure.
So that's
because now you start doubting yourself when all this is going on, and you're in a community where you're not allowed to doubt yourself, so you're not going to tell anybody about it. So, anyways, I see this whole litany of things, and about 100 patients into it, I think, well, I wonder what Ambien does to sleep. I wonder if that's real sleep. Because when I learned in medical school, somebody couldn't sleep, you gave them Ambien. Like, that was it. That was it. You came in and said, I can't sleep. Here you go. That or Valium.
Now, all I know about Ambien is that you get hooked on it, and that it mimics sleep, but it doesn't give you any of the nutritional value, if you will, of sleep. Is that true?
Essentially. So when we study people's brains with electrodes, we're looking at what's called their brain wave patterns, and we consolidate that into a histogram, which kind of shows you were in deep sleep this long, you were in REM sleep that long, here's what your sleep architecture looks like. All sleep drugs distort that. During deep sleep is when your body's recovering, growth hormone, testosterone are being secreted, you're repairing all your muscles, your damaged tissues, you're fighting off infections, parasites, all that stuff during deep sleep. You go up into REM sleep, your brain's repairing, your brain's like replenishing neurotransmitters, you're taking things out of your working memory, putting them into your long-term memory.
And so now we're talking about if you are near an explosion, if you do have blunt force trauma to the head, something like that, the normal sleep that would be helping to mitigate the damage and repair that isn't present either in this high-risk group.
And that's another problem is that TBI interferes with sleep, and sleep interferes, and lack of sleep predisposes you to TBI.
You're in a horrible circle.
Yeah. So there's all these vicious downward cycles, and so anyways, I go through all these panels. I start looking at all these people's labs. I know I can't give them testosterone. I'm like, all right, how else can I raise testosterone? Let's take Ambien away from them. Let's get them off of alcohol. Let's get some sleep hygiene in there. And they're all vitamin D3 deficient, and that's important for sleep, so I gave them vitamin D3. And then a few weeks later, I found out, magnesium's required for vitamin D3 reaction. Give them magnesium. Then I learned a little about melatonin. I just give them some melatonin, and then just slowly added ingredient after ingredient after ingredient.
So you're doing D3 and magnesium at night before they go to bed? It's at
night, And so the SEALs ended up, it worked. I got everybody off of Ambien. They were taking all over-the-counter supplements, but they were having to go to 3 or 4 different stores to buy it, and this was a liquid, and that was a powder, and this was a capsule, and they're like, we can't travel with this, and they called it the Doc's Sleep Cocktail, which is where the original name was Doc Parsley Sleep Cocktail. They named it, right? So,
that's awesome.
When they were just after me, continually after me, dude, make this into a product for us, make it. And so, I tried to work.
It's kind of like this event. Yeah. That's what all this is people are like, I wish I could shop everywhere for the stuff that I like. And like these paleo events and all that, it's kind of becoming that kind of a thing where, like our friends at On It, they do it, and it's become like the Amazon of health in a way. Or
every time I go here, I pick up some new vendor that's changing my life. I'm ordering all my grass-fed meat from these guys in the mail now instead of going to the.
What a great time to be alive, you know?
There's a ton of cool stuff here and a ton of cool energy and
because these weren't even conversations.
It's really
when we're
nice.
kids, who's having a conversation about don't eat this or don't eat that? I'm sitting at dinner last night and we're talking to these people and they're like, our kids, or John Welborn is another one. He goes, my kids, their first real meal off of breast milk is sweet potatoes and liver.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like imagine if you're eating real food and clean food all through the time. I've been puzzling on this question about, like, imagine if you had an athlete from 1920, 1930 eating food that was available then versus with the advent of MREs and all that kind of stuff, and then we got and we deplete the soil, whatever. If you had an athlete that was only naturally fed now, they would need steroids to be able to compete with that 1920s athlete just because of the nutritional value of the food, I would think. I mean,
it's probably. I think
crazy.
I think we've kind of proven that, right, with the 100-meter dash. Right?
Sure.
Yeah. Nobody's gotten any faster in like 80 years or something,
wild?
Despite using performance-enhancing drugs. Right. They're still doing what.
So about your
Jesse Owens that ran the 9.2 or something, and then. Ben Johnson on jacked up on steroids ran a 9.1 or something.
So crazy. Anyways,
Hey, your sleep cocktail, is that still out?
So we renamed it the Sleep Remedy because apparently Sleep Cocktail sucks as a marketing name. And
did you guys debut that here last year, or was it just a talk?
We just changed it. Like the first new order is actually here.
Right.
So we have a booth out for Sleep Remedy. It got blocked from all these firewalls and these corporations and government
because of the word cocktail.
Because of the word cocktail.
Interesting.
And a lot of people thought it had alcohol in it because it was a cocktail.
I could see that. Yeah.
And so it just kind of had a negative connotation, and so we changed the name to Sleep Remedy. It's still exactly the same thing.
And what's all in it? D3, magnesium?
So it's the melatonin production pathway is L-tryptophan, 5-hydroxytryptophan. 5-hydroxy or 5-HTP, you've heard it called, right? 5-HTP becomes serotonin. But in order for that to happen, you need vitamin D3 and magnesium. And then a very light dusting of melatonin to initiate. And then
light dusting is how many milligrams?
It's proprietary. Can't say I have a patent pending, but it's about 20% of what your brain would ordinarily produce over a night.
Because obviously, like, these are all in like 5 milligram, 10 milligram dosages, and I'm like, do I take 2, and is that better, or is that
No, so from the time the sun goes down until the time the sun comes up, your brain will make about 5 to 6 micrograms of melatonin.
Okay.
So if you take 5 milligrams of melatonin,
that is what I'm reading on products.
That's why when I get the 10, I'm done.
The top.
See, I messed with that for a little bit, and I was getting the hangover. I was sleeping, but I was waking up hungover.
That doesn't stand for micrograms. Then what they're selling, that is milligrams.
It's milligrams.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, so you're way.
Why do they overshoot the mark so much?
Well,
so you feel
because they're using it. Yeah, because it's really powerful that way. Like my product. My product just initiates sleep. Like it initiates all the cascades, and then make sure that you have all the materials to keep it going.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it doesn't force sleep.
It doesn't slam
It's all gone in like 2 to 3 hours.
I started
so if your
taking
brain doesn't keep going and doing the right things, then you're going to wake up.
I started using it on the road last year.
But, it just initiates. That's the whole. And then the other thing that happens when your brain's getting ready for sleep is your brain produces a bunch of GABA, and GABA kind of slows down your brain.
Yeah.
GABA doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier very well, but there's a product on the market that's in a lot of sleep aids. It's a GABA molecule with a little non-polar ring on it called phenyl GABA, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier. So I have that in there as well, just to give you a little boost of GABA. And again, very small dose that's all gone in a couple hours. And if people, primarily it's designed for the SEALs, and then I told them I would do it, and I did it, and it was out of integrity.
Right.
I didn't really want to do it, to be dead honest with you.
Right.
It's been a pain in the ass to learn how to do all this stuff. I don't want to run a supplement company.
Run by federal guidelines and all this bullshit.
And there's so much danger in all the regulation committees. There's so much crap out there. But the people who benefit the most from it are shift workers. Shift workers almost never get 8 hours of sleep. You can never completely realign your circadian rhythms with shift work. So if your sleep duration or sleep quality is going to suck, this will help you sleep better. Awesome. So get the best quality you can. The other category of people is like, I know what ideal is, and I'm trying to get to ideal, but here's reality. Like, this is what I can really do to prepare for bed. We're going to bridge that gap and help you get as though you had done your sleep hygiene a little bit better.
Right.
And it'll help get you to sleep. Or for people who wake up in the middle of the night and they have a lot of sort of stress hormones going, take this, you initiate the cascades, melatonin decreases stress hormones, they can fall back to sleep if they take it in the middle of the night. And then some people like me, I've never had any sleep problems. Lots of people have come up and told me I don't have any sleep problems, but I take it because I just sleep so damn good. It feels so much better.
My thing when I take stuff like that, I'll be taking, like, everybody says take Alpha Brain during the day and you get more. I take 6 of them before I go to bed at night.
Yeah.
And I feel like it gets me into deep REM sleep quicker. Like I feel like more rested after I do that. And so all that, like I could fall asleep. I had a bunch of coffee today. I could fall asleep right now.
Right.
Like I can sleep wherever. Like it's catch as catch can for me because I guess I'm kind of like a shift worker in some ways. But
right.
The same thing. I feel like I sleep. The time I spend asleep is more valuable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Than if I didn't nourish
it's a higher quality
with vitamin D and magnesium for sure.
Yeah, and you can tell subjectively. Like,
I can't wait to try your product.
You don't need a sleep study to know you slept better.
Right.
So you wake up and you go, I feel better. I slept better.
Right. For sure.
It's done.
What do you think about beds and stuff?
Beds are super important. You don't necessarily need to spend 20 grand on a bed. The biggest problem with beds, though, is that most people are heterosexual and the woman's half the size of the man usually, and you're trying to sleep on the same surface. That's pretty problematic, that you're both going to be comfortable. There's going to be some compromise in there. But a bed that's too soft will cause you to toss and turn a lot. Your micro wakings will be more frequent. Your sleep architecture will be distorted. If a bed that's too hard, same thing happens. You start cutting off blood supply to an area, you move. And then the other thing is, if your bed in your bedroom isn't cool enough, you'll constantly move around your bed to find a cool spot. So beds are important, man. Like I don't skimp on beds. I always tell people, two things you never skimp on is beds and shoes.
Yeah, I love that.
You're not in one, you're in the other, right?
Yeah.
So they should both be really comfortable. It definitely makes a big difference.
What were you going to say, Keith?
Yeah, I was just going to comment. I forget, but a lot of people they're out there and think that they're sleeping well, and they're waking up crummy, but they don't realize how bad they're sleeping. They're waking up I was waking up 2-3 times a night,
Yeah.
And even when I was sleeping, I was still waking up fatigued and trying to figure that out. And there's a lot of people out there that to try your product, something like that, to see what a good night feels like, and then to see how much energy you have during the day. That could be such a beneficial thing.
Yeah.
Talking about sleep surfaces, doing Navy SEALs, they're on the cots, aren't they? Aren't they on the cots and on the ground and all that? What are you doing with that? What do you?
Well, I mean, they're sleeping that way all the time, right? So you again, there's ideal and there's reality, and you just deal with that bit.
Right. You mitigate the bad parts.
Yeah, you mitigate it around it. You do what you can. You make sure your diet's clean. You take naps when you can. You use stimulants, whatever it takes.
So that's it. If you're doing the shift work, we don't do anything really special anymore. We're working on movies and traveling, especially Lacey, our partner here, is always working. She's always traveling. Sometimes you're getting 2 hours of sleep a night. She's answering emails all night. What can you do? You kind of touch on it to make the most of your sleep and get recovered so you can function the next day. Either you're clearing rooms or you're doing a business meeting or something like that. Is there stuff that you can do to, function like that properly? For say you're doing it for 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's an infinite number of ways to mitigate. People can check out my site, and I write a lot about that. But you're basically, what you want to do is you want to catch up on your sleep as quickly as possible. Right? So when you've been awake for a certain amount of time, you feel like sleeping, because things are building up in your brain that are actually damaging to your brain. So the longer those are in there, the more damage you're doing to your brain, the more damage you're doing to your neurotransmitters, which means more damage to your hormones, which means more damage to your body and everything else, right? So everything's connected. So if you do shift work and you want to, this happens a lot with law enforcement. They do shift work, they get home at 8 o'clock in the morning, they have a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old and their wives, and they're like, I want to see my kids. And I'm like, you got to go to bed. It's not what you want to do, but the best thing you can do for your health is to go to sleep. You go to the World Health Organization online, you look up shift work, it's classified as a carcinogen. And then it's also suspected in cardiovascular disease, stroke, diabetes, obesity. Like you just go down we know that this is a very dangerous way to live,
and that's
but
really,
we're not going to talk the world out of 24/7 when working. It's not.
When you get home and you jump in that bed, like that's 3 hours of crummy sleep. That's if you can get 4 or 5 hours. That's crummy sleep.
But you know what I tell people? I tell the law enforcement guys a lot. I'm like, come home, go to bed for at least 3 hours, and if you do a 2 to 3 hour nap, you will flush out a lot of those toxins in your brain. You get up, play with your kids for a while, and then find another 3 or 4 hour block to sleep, and then go to work. The next day. Use stimulants wisely. Use supplements to help you sleep, so your quality of sleep is good.
Yeah.
And really, getting your brain ready for sleep is 2 things: decreasing the light that's going in your eyes about 3 hours before bedtime, and slowing your brain down.
Yeah.
And if you can overcome the brain slowing, right? Because when the light goes down and melatonin starts being produced, your brain is also producing that GABA that I was talking about to slow down your brain. It makes you less aware of your environment. And we've all had this experience, right? So you wake up in the morning, you're tired of shit, you got a terrible night's sleep or a short night's sleep, and you say, as soon as I'm done with whatever I'm doing today, I'm coming home and I'm going right back to bed. And then you go to work or whatever you do, and one of your friends goes, "Oh, let's go get a beer. Let's go to happy hour." And it rips you into it. So you're like, "All right, I'll go have 1 beer." And then you go drink a CNS depressant, right? You're already tired. You drink something.
When you call it like that, a CNS depressant.
CNS depressant, and then you drink another CNS depressant, and then all of a sudden you don't feel sleepy anymore, right? Like, how does that work? That doesn't make any sense.
Dude.
And it's because you've completely overridden the GABA system.
That's what I was
your
wondering.
brain is super stimulated.
We just talked about this the other day. Everybody, like, we're at Paleo Effects. Everybody wants to go out and like, oh, let's go party and and all that. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't drink, and so I'm like, I don't know how anybody does it. Like, how do they rally and go after it? I'm like, they must just forget that they're fatigued, because like, how can you function then the next day? Because I'm not that dude at this point in my life. I just don't do that, and that makes a hell of a lot of sense.
I'm the same way. I mean, these things destroy me, because like, I'm always a speaker, so there's the speaker's dinner, and then there's the charity dinner, and then there's that.
Sure.
So every night I've been out till like 11, 12 o'clock.
And you're not napping.
And I usually go to bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock.
I power through with coffee a lot, and I can tell the effects of that, because then I'm not thinking as clear, and I don't feel as good. I wake up in that state all the time.
What about things like binaural beats?
I dig those. There's a couple of different technologies on there that only in like a super scientific way differ. But the basic concept is you put one frequency in one ear or a different frequency in another ear. Right now we're looking around and we can see everything, but we all know that we have blind spots. Right? But we can't see our blind spot because our brain fills it in. That's what your brain tries to do with the binaural beat. So you put 300 hertz difference in this ear than that ear, or 30 hertz different than this ear than that ear. And your brain tries to figure out what's this difference, right? Is something coming towards me? Is something going away from me? Like what? And after a while, your brain's like, okay, let's just ride with this. And it starts putting this 30 hertz wave across your brain, which is a delta wave. So
cool.
It helps you go into delta waves. So when you study people who meditate really well, like monks that have been doing it their whole lives, they go into a delta brainwave state by meditating. When people sleep, deep sleep is delta, omega and delta wave sleep.
I feel like I'm addicted to that delta wave.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing I like more than sleeping. I mean, I love, like...
Have you tried the HoloSync? Have you ever heard of that? Centerpoint Research, or Centerpoint.com or something. A guy named Bill Harris developed something called HoloSync, which is like that, but you can't actually hear the beats. So it's at a threshold below your conscious hearing, but it's still
doing its thing.
Your brain still perceives it.
You just put in headphones and play this?
So you put these headphones on, and there's like rain and gongs, and that's all you can hear.
What's that called again?
HoloSync.
I want that while I meditate.
Yeah.
That would help my meditation, right?
Absolutely. And it's designed to be a meditation tool, but it will also put you to sleep if you're feeling tired and you want to take a nap. So every day, even I've been here, my car's parked out back, I have my Bose noise cancellation. I go out there for 30 minutes, I put those things on.
Yeah.
I fall asleep, most of the time just because I'm tired from these events.
Right.
And then I pop up, I come in here, I'm like, new man, baby, new game.
That's
Let's
beautiful.
Let's get after it.
I have a question about sleep duration.
Yeah.
And, I'd heard or read, somebody sent me a study, and they go, if you can sleep 30 minutes, if you can get 30 minutes or an hour, sleep for 30 minutes, and you'll be more refreshed. They're talking about like in branches of 30 minutes, in blocks of 30 minutes. So like 90-minute sleep is great. A 3-hour sleep is great. Better than a 2-hour sleep. You'll be more rested. Your circadian rhythms work on a 30-minute cycle. Is that true? Is there something to that?
That should be 90 minutes.
Every 90 minutes.
Yeah, so it's 90 to 120 minutes is a sleep cycle.
Okay.
So that means you start in stage 1, which is just kind of the intention of going to bed and feeling a little tired.
So if I could sleep for 5 hours or 3 hours, I'm better off sleeping 3 hours?
No, because it's 90 to 120 minutes. It's both, and it's neither.
Right.
And there's a variation. So what people are talking about is like if you nap long enough to get into deep sleep, slow wave sleep, it's really hard to wake up.
Right.
So you feel groggy when you come up. But guess what? When you went into deep sleep, you started releasing growth hormone and testosterone
That's where the
and
good stuff
repairing your
lives.
body. And
Yeah.
so you wake up groggy and you have to power through that to get back up, but you did yourself a favor, man.
Okay.
So, a nap is anywhere from 20 minutes to 120 minutes. After that, we call it sleep.
Yeah.
20-minute nap is good for creativity. Like you can be exhausted,
Yep.
close your eyes for 20 minutes and be, okay, I got an idea. I know how to solve that. You can kind of get your work done if you're sort of in a creative kind of profession. 20 to 45 minutes is what we call executive functioning, which is what it sounds like what would an executive do? Plan, make decisions, figure out algorithms, problem solve.
That's what Lacey needs.
What's that?
That's what Lacey needs.
Yes.
Executive decision.
So a nap in that duration, of course you still get creativity, but
Right.
then you got the executive functioning on top of that, so double whammy. But then you go from the 45 minutes out to 120 minutes, you get the deep sleep cycle as well. So an ideal nap is really like around 90 minutes to 120 minutes. You can get an hour and a half nap. And to your point, what I've done with some of the guys that train I train at Jocko's Gym, and some of the fighters there who are trying to get ready for a fight, and Dean is one of the guys that does this. I say do a morning session training and then nap in the middle of the day and then train again
That's
at
when I felt
night.
best.
You literally, by research done over and over again, you learn twice as fast.
No shit.
So if you're trying to compensate, like you're trying to match yourself against somebody like, I suck at that and that's his strong game.
Right.
I got to learn a lot of skills really quick.
Right.
The fastest way to learn is to learn sleep, learn sleep, learn sleep.
I do that with
That's how I got
lines
through
too.
college.
Like I learn learning lines for like movies or whatever.
Yeah.
I try to get it 2 days. So, and no matter what, that first day when I get the lines, I try to memorize everything. I don't care how it is. I got to memorize it because it seems like when I sleep, when I first wake up, then it's imprinted there more.
Right.
If I can sleep on it 2 nights, I mean it's there solid.
Yeah, so you learn it even faster if you studied it and napped and studied it and napped.
Wow. So you can do it in 1 day.
Yeah, so they've done research where they teach any skill you want, right?
Yeah.
Snatch, typing with your left hand, playing the piano, doesn't matter. Any kind of skill. We're going to train you on a skill. You start trying to do this skill, and it could even be problem solving. It could be, it doesn't have to be physical. It could be cognitive or physical. I'm going to train you for half an hour. At the end of that half an hour, we're going to test you and see how good you do.
Yeah.
Then come back at 7 o'clock at night. We're going to test you again. And then go to sleep that night, come back the next morning. We start the whole thing over, right? You do the morning training. They test you at the end of it. You come back at 7 o'clock at night. You're worse than when you left your training session because you've forgotten stuff, right?
Yeah,
your working memory has been clouded with other stuff. You've done other things. You've concentrated on other things. You've lost some of that information. You go home and you go to sleep, you'll come back the next morning better than you left that morning training, even though you sucked at the night training.
That's cool.
But you throw a nap in there, you train them in the morning, test them, tell them to take a 1 hour nap at noon, come back at 7 o'clock and test. They test better than they left the morning at. So they learned, they consolidated just like they would overnight. Now they go home and they go to sleep, and they come back even better. So they literally learn twice as fast.
What if you can just shut
documented.
Sorry, Tait, what if you can just shut your eyes for 10 minutes? What if you get like 5 minutes quality sleep? Does that count? Does that still work?
Any sleep helps.
Yeah.
Any sleep helps. So like we say, you've heard me say these broad sweeping statements that growth hormones are created during deep sleep and REM sleep does neurotransmitters. Everything does everything, but predominantly,
there's sweet
sleep.
spots. We're talking about sweet spots.
There's things that are largely true, and then there's the details that everything is really kind of always happening.
So is sleep kind of imprinting the skill on us, whereas we don't have to use cognitive ability in a way so much to remember it. Like I could remember it, but now it's in my body and now it's part of me more.
If you want something to be a subconscious memory, like riding a bike or any type of jiu-jitsu movement or how you throw a punch or any of this muscle memory, right? We know once you've learned it, you're not going to forget how to do that again. Well, I actually forget jiu-jitsu.
Like balance,
well.
balance doesn't. Balance is like that too. Like in a way.
So you learn when you learn a skill, it's first in your short-term memory because it's a concept, right? I'm telling you, put your leg here, do this, slide this under there. I'm telling you what to do. It's like, okay, I'm understanding what you say. Eventually, you put that in your working memory. That's when you're drilling. It's in my working memory. Now, when I go to sleep, it gets consolidated into my long-term memory. Once it's in my long-term memory, there's a couple of areas of my brain that it will be in. It won't just be in one area. It'll be in my motor cortex, but it's also going to be in my hippocampus, which is like emotional and subconscious. And it's going to be something that I'm now subconsciously capable of firing without even thinking about it. The next time this guy does this, I'm going to slide my leg that way, and it's just like, well, I would do that with drilling all the time.
I would go I would do drills in my head, whatever I learned that day. I would go to bed and I would go I would go through each movement and where my corresponding body part would need to be on theirs. And I would just do that as a walking. I would exercise the movement just in my brain, thinking about it while I closed my eyes to go to sleep until I would go to sleep.
Yeah, and you probably know this already, but that's been proven to be nearly as effective as actually drilling.
Those mental repetitions.
And the mental repetition, what we now know is that now we have functional MRIs where we can look at what your brain is doing.
Right.
When people visualize, it's exactly the same as if they're actually doing it.
Wow.
And it actually causes micro nerve firing, so your muscles actually react a tiny bit. It can detect it with with some equipment. You can't detect it on your own. When you're laying there, you're actually tensioning those muscles in that order to do that drill.
It's like when I do moves when I sleep.
So you can literally take something that you just learned, like I taught you how to do this once.
Right.
You didn't even get to drill it, right? I taught you how to do this once. Now you go lay down and visualize that once. Like don't let anything else in your head, but go lay down and visualize this and rehearse that in your brain. Fall asleep, wake up, and it will be just as though you've drilled it. It will be consolidated and you've learned it.
Do the mental reps. Do the mental reps.
You're in the game.
That's amazing. There was a study, and I don't know what it was, but when you said that, it triggered a memory that there was a fella that was in a concentration camp or he was in some kind of a war camp, and one of the ways he got through it is he would go through and he would play his favorite course in South Carolina or whatever, and he would go through the whole golf course and think of every stroke, what putter he was going to use, where, all that whole deal.
Yeah.
And that when he got out 12 years later or whatever it was, that he went and he shot par on that golf course. He hadn't played golf in however long, and that kind of stuff.
And a lot of those guys built houses and stuff like that too. They literally planned exactly every step they were going to do to build a house.
And it keeps those guys alive.
Yeah, it keeps them alive.
Because the guys then wither and die or just get hopeless. And
I
these
think
guys,
that's Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
It is.
Yeah. Great book.
Yeah, somebody's like, why are you reading this about that? And I was like, dude, why? Yeah.
Read it and you'll know why I'm reading it,
right?
And then you'll read it 50 times.
Isn't that amazing?
I can't even count how many times I've read that book.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was in the trunk of my car for a while, and I would just put it wherever, and people are like, what is this?
I think I pulled it out of there a few times. I was like, where is this?
Yeah, man, rad.
Yeah.
So what's next on the horizon for?
Well, I have a book that's really completed, but publishers are gonna all kind of have their take on where they
Sure.
want it to go. I haven't signed a deal yet, but I'm working on negotiating a deal in my book.
It's really exciting.
We've hit a point with the supplement company where I can hire an operations manager or a COO or something. I can extract myself from that day-to-day crap.
Cool.
Good.
Nice.
And then I'll just be sort of, the face of the brand, and I'll, go on the podcast and go
Right.
on whatever interviews and television and that stuff to promote it. But my real passion is kind of getting this message out that, everybody thinks about health as nutrition and exercise, and nobody thinks about sleep. This community is exceptional. More people think about
course.
it. But by and large, the world just thinks sleep is a luxury.
Right.
It's optional. It's the first thing to go when time gets tight.
Right. I'll
I
sleep
just
when I'm
a
dead.
little less.
Yeah.
I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Well, you'll be
Sleep
dead
is for the
sooner.
weak. Yes,
And
exactly.
your life will be less vital.
Yeah, you're going to get there quicker.
Yeah.
So good. Congratulations.
That's the interesting thing about movement, and especially like as I age, it seems like to maintain vibrance and kind of a zest in that way. You have to negotiate how those things are. Like, I need more sleep now, or I need to pay. Maybe I don't need more sleep, but I need to pay more attention to how I eat and how I nourish myself. And I think of sleep as nourishment than I had to 10 years ago.
Right.
It's just different.
So what's happening? You don't need more sleep, but you were more resilient when you were younger. So even though you were sleep depriving yourself, you could compensate better because you had higher levels of hormones and faster repairs and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But a young adult and an old adult need the same amount of sleep.
Okay.
But you don't need, I always everybody throws out the number 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep is kind of, the magic number. It can vary a little bit. But, what people have to realize, too, is that it's not the same every day.
No,
right?
I'm great on 4 hours, 5 hours a lot of the time.
Totally depends on the output, too.
Yeah, it's like if you have a super hard day, you need more sleep than if you laid around and clicked the remote all day. You won't need as much sleep. There's not as much repair to be done.
And hard is different. Because like what a strenuous day is for me, it's not necessarily if I work out hard.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily all that. Like sometimes like standing at a trade show all day long, that's hard. Being on a movie set and standing there and not doing anything all day long when you're just waiting for the next shot and all that.
Yeah.
There's nothing more arduous. I ache as if I've been in 3 fights and rolled for 6 hours that day the next day sometimes. And all I did was stand in shitty shoes on cement all day long.
Yeah.
And it's
so
a
true.
trip, man.
It's hard to explain that to people. What, you're tired?
Nobody gets that unless you've been in that, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, totally, that's the thing too."
Yeah,
like when I mentioned to you about my heart racing when I woke up, and then I'm around people that are like, "Oh, I totally understand what that is." But if I said that to my mom, she'd be like, "I don't really know what. Maybe you're really sick,
right?
Right.
So I'll tell you, man, I'm going to head right after this. I'm going to head over to your booth and buy some supplements. Like I've known that's been like the missing link, and I got doing my diet and everything. I know it's been my missing link.
I used it after the last Paleo FX. I got a box, and I used it when I was on a film set, and I was getting 4-hour turnarounds.
Yeah.
And so I was like hyped up when I came home, so I didn't have time to like chill out or go through what I would normally do to just calm down to go to sleep. And I needed to be up in 4 hours and going again. So it was like there's just not enough time. So whatever I can do to get to sleep quick. And I could feel literally 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I start to read a book, got through 2 pages. I'm out.
Yeah.
Up in 4 hours. Not that I would feel great in 4 hours. And that's just because it's 4 hours. I'm like a 9-hour sleeper type of person. But I did that for 3 months and it was great. Yeah. And I actually had like 3 packets left, and I gave it to the trainer that was coming on right after me. And I was like, here, just give us a shot or whatever. And a week later, she texts me. She's like, where do I get more of this stuff? It's like amazing.
It's like crack in the 80s, man.
Yeah.
Like, people try it once, and they're like, everybody gets the samples. They come back the next day, give me some.
Yeah, how do I get it?
It's like a lot of those things are about, like a lot of people that out there like are eating crummy. They don't realize they feel awful, and they're not sleeping well.
It's like being on gluten. It's like when you eat gluten all the time, you don't know that you're gluten sick. You have no idea until you're 40 days off gluten, and then and then you have it again. You're like, holy fuck, I was poisoned for forever.
Yeah, I was so pissed at Rob because Rob and I are super tight. We lectured at a bunch of events together. That's how we got to know each other, and he's this nutrition guy lecturing on nutrition and sleep, and I'm this sleep guy lecturing on sleep and nutrition. And so we just became buds and started doing projects together. And he's a part of the supplement, but I was so pissed at him because he got me to go gluten free, and I was like, dude, I don't have any problems. Like I get no problems. And then I went gluten-free for like 2 years, and now like I can't. I mean, it's been 5 years now, but I can't handle any gluten at all.
Yeah, you just get
I'm
destroyed.
like in the bathroom the second I sniff it,
and I don't feel good.
Yeah,
like not only that stuff, but it's like I can't perform or recover in the same way.
And,
I get
and
foggy.
you realize it after you're screwed up, right? And it's just like when you're chronically sleep deprived, you think you feel normal, and then you get some good sleep. You're like, oh, this is normal.
I think that's a good telling sign. Is like, am I loving the life? Like I used to love this life that I'm doing, and now it's the thing I have to do.
Now it's grinding.
And if you're in that spot, you know that seems like an easy answer to go. Oh, this is how I get my zest again about this thing I'm doing, and I'm stoked about it now. You know.
And like I've never had sleep problems in my life, other than I just deprived myself of sleep intentionally, and we're the only animals on the planet that do that. Humans are the only animals that will.
You ever been on a 3-day crystal meth run?
No, I have not.
Well, I'll tell you what, you feel pretty present the whole time.
Okay, hook me up with that. No, I need that experience.
I feel like we met a guy walking around here that might be in that state.
I did that one time, and then I was like, I got to eat something or something. You just don't feel like eating anything, and then I went into the cupboard, and there's bread in there, and I was like, oh, and I fucking balled up this little piece of bread, and like about a third of a golf ball size, and I was like, and there's like multivitamins, and so I was like, I gotta get healthy, you know, I gotta be healthy, right? And that's what I'm thinking, right? And I take some multivitamins.
This is the drugged out brain.
I drink it with a beer. It's 10 in the morning, you know, and I just labor over eating this little piece of bread, and then I did 3 pull-ups on the door jamb, and I was like, okay, I'm good now. Just demented.
Wow.
It's a different life.
Those are good.
It's a different life.
Those are good choices.
That's a great story. I don't have
that was the
anything
first step in the path to paleo.
Rob, I'm a total moron. I feel stupid about this, but I actually ran out of my own sleep product. Right? I've never had sleep problems.
That means you're a gracious.
I run out of coffee all the time.
But I take it because I like it. Because I feel like I sleep better. And I just ran out of it, and I'm like, I'll call the Warrior House next week, or it just kept going on. And it had been about a month. And then Rob was staying over at my house. We were doing some gig together, and he starts mixing up his sleep cocktail, and he goes, you going to do one? And I'm like, I haven't taken that in like a month. You know, I'm good. And he's like, you sure? I got another one.
That's awesome.
I'm like,
he's the best.
I'm like, all right. So I take it. I wake up the next morning. I'm like, holy shit. Why did I quit taking this?
Good,
right?
Wow.
It's like when you quit exercising for 2-3 weeks, and you're like, I'm fine. And
I guess I never need to exercise.
And then you start exercising, and you're like, what the fuck was I thinking, man?
It's so great though that you had the experience. To know that. And you said something that I think is super worth saying something about, where you were talking about. I didn't want to make this product, but here I am, and I told these guys I would do it, and so I honored what my word was, and it's kind of like us. I say that we're like reluctant entrepreneurs in that kind of regard. Is that like we didn't intend to do anything with it, but it's like we wanted to share it with people, and then and I think that's the nature of things. Is like, I mean, it's the story about why you ran out. It's like you end up sharing things with people, and then that's what it is, and it's a huge thing. And I remember when Rob first looked at starting into a supplement thing, and dude, people online are motherfuckers. I mean, or maybe there's only 3 motherfuckers and they're just loud, because there's a lot of people that are like fucking right on, and they love that you're chart, but they're not very vocal. But the guys that aren't, and just getting eviscerated about like, oh, he's trying to make money off paleo as an idea, and it's kind of like dudes that are making money off jiu-jitsu as like. It's like, this stuff should be free, but guys got to eat, and when they dedicate their lives to it, you got to pay for their skill and everything that went into it. And the other aspect is like, it's just trying to put good stuff in the world. It's not like I'm trying to give you fucking Twizzlers or something. It's, you know what I mean? It's like,
and what pisses me off about that, and we experience this a lot.
And this is too, the product isn't a fraction of what it took to get there. All the trial and error, all the things that went into it, and then getting it to be a thing that the FDA or whoever would approve to get. God damn, man.
And then learning enough business to be able to make it work.
You got a guy with integrity like you and Rob, and that puts something on. All you got to say is thank you to those guys. You know.
And the interesting thing to me about what you said, and I say this all the time, and doctors are feel this pressure all the time. is there's this feeling in America, at least, I haven't lived in other countries, there's this feeling that if you're helping people, you should be helping people because you want to help people, and you shouldn't be getting money off of it.
Right.
And if you're getting rich off or even making reasonable money off of helping people, you're a scumbag. But yet we don't have any problem with people who make money not helping people. Right?
Nobody's mad at British Petroleum or Coca-Cola.
Right. It's like, we don't
and they're
care.
actually killing people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like there's a skewed. I guess that's the power of marketing, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that brand attachment that people have growing up, or whatever, like emotional tie that they created. Just okay, you can give me whatever you want, and I'll associate with that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're down in South Florida or San Diego or something, and you're a real estate agent who's making $5 million a year, just showing people housing. You want that house? Yeah, okay, yeah.
Right.
Sign this paper, and I get $50,000.
Right.
And I'm like, you're not really helping people. I mean, you kind of created this market to make it hard for us to buy a house without you. It's kind of smarmy.
I'm your loan agent.
Kind of okay. Yeah, kind of smarmy, but nobody cares. Like nobody seems to bitch, right?
Right.
How much money does your bank make off of your money?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. And
you want some of your money, that'll cost you some
and how
money.
much this whole tax thing, and they're like, there's a little metric going around that was like, if you make whatever, here's what it'd be under Bernie, here's what it'd be under Hillary, here's what it'd be under Trump, here's what it'd be under whoever the Satanist was that's not in it anymore, whatever. But like all those things out there, I go. It doesn't. This is a muted. This is such a driven narrative by the man, if you will, because this would all be a moot point if Bank of America paid any money in taxes. Right. It's like these guys that are these fucking monolithic companies that have fucking billions of dollars in returns every quarter. Yeah. That like BP, when they fucked up the ocean, they didn't even feel that. That was their best year yet, and we were in a depression. Yeah. And so their fine of $2 billion or something was maybe like 4% of their quarter at that time. It's crazy. Yeah. And so you look at that, it's like, if we just taxed people that were making money off Americans in America doing business here, and then, Coke or whoever moves their headquarters to Ireland, they're like, no, we're a company that's over here, we just do business there now, we don't even pay American taxes. Right. If we just tax the fuck out of those people, even moderately, no Americans would have to pay taxes anymore. I mean, there would be a real adjustment there towards ethics. Right. But that's not really where we're living right now, but there needs to be some kind of shift like that, because that's a problem, man.
Tait for president.
What's that?
I said Tait's going to run for president.
Listen, I've never balanced a checkbook. I don't know how to do a budget. I'm not really the guy for that.
Have you seen that rant on YouTube about that guy telling Obama to balance the checkbook?
No.
He's like, it's this black guy. He does like these just comedic rants. I don't know his name. You probably look it up, like tax rant or something, or budget rant. It would probably be called. And he's like, how the fuck you getting $17 trillion in debt, B? He's like, you're the first black president. You're acting like a black president. It's like, balance the checkbook.
That's hilarious.
And he just like starts going off about. He's like, we have the smartest people in America. They can't balance a checkbook, right? Like, you learned that in third grade, man. How come you can't balance a checkbook?
So true.
I always thought
you're still borrowing money. You're $17 trillion in debt. How does that even work, man? Like, how do we still have a credit card? I don't get it.
I always thought, like, when I was a little kid, I was like, so we owe the money to us. How about we just call it even?
Yeah.
I still don't understand why not. I guess there's other parameters in place.
I don't understand.
I don't get it.
I don't understand enough economics.
I'm not the guy.
How that works.
Like a few years ago, when all the EU was falling apart and America was in a total recession, and China was,
and they're like, you want to buy Greece for $20?
Yeah.
I'm sitting there going, okay, how can the entire world be in debt?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how can
to each other somehow?
Everybody's in debt to everybody else. Let's just call it quits.
Did you ever look at the economic hit?
Crisp high five.
We're good. Yeah.
The economic hitman.
No.
There's a great book. I'll show you a little.
Confessions of an
If you do like Confessions of an Economic Hitman. This dude that goes and just decentralizes governments and it's crazy. And there's a little animated 2-minute thing on YouTube about it. If you Google that, you'll find it. But it's descriptive in like, oh, here's how we end up in places like this, and here's also why people like the three guys that said fuck you to the international banks to the world banks trying to buy them out.
Yeah,
would be like Libya, Iran, and then I think like Hugo Chavez. That was it. And then all those guys, those are terrorists, and we're going to need to attack them.
Yeah.
And that's like there's such huge fuckery that's conflated with patriotism and with all these things, and there's all these hidden agendas that it's hard to get on board and go, okay, I'm on humans teams. I'm on the team of humanity, and I want everybody to do well.
Right.
And how do we make that happen? Because I think the hardest thing about being a soldier would be to sign up, because who you sign up for, if you're going to look for a leader, you want them to carry you in good stead and with honor and ethics and towards a good cause. You're trusting that.
Right.
And then you saw in this Iraq war, I think in a lot of ways, is that we became the bodyguards for corporate endeavors to go into other places. And it's like, fuck, you guys fucked me. You guys fucked me, and now my leg's gone or whatever,
And what I think there's a really important distinction is that, as you said, patriotism is like the buzzword in America. You can get everybody spun up with patriotism. We're a patriotic country, and that's great.
Yep.
Our biggest asset is that we have the best military in the world by a laughable margin. Like we're bigger than the next 13 combined, and 12 of those are our allies. It's like we own war, right? We're supposed to be training warriors, right? And what does a warrior want? A warrior wants to resolve the conflict in the best way possible for everyone involved. If I have to kill you, I'll kill you. Like that. If you force me to kill you, if that's the only way I can convince you, okay, that's what we'll do. But you want to negotiate? Let's negotiate. Yeah. But what we have turned war into meaning is that there's all these evil people over there that we got to go fucking kill every one of them and burn them and then smash them.
They can't all be bad.
And then it's like, okay, there's some bad dudes over there, but we really should want to protect all those other people who are wearing burqas and not living like us and have this you don't have to live like us.
Just people.
You're warriors. Like, I want to solve this in the best way possible. And a lot of leadership doesn't. And a lot of politicians use it as a platform as like, we're going to go kick these people's ass because they did X and we're going to smash them all.
And especially if your business is making tanks.
Yeah.
I need to sell some tanks, so we're going to need some conflicts here.
I just did SOFIC, the SOFIC.
What's that?
Special operations, like
all you guys fucking talk. You motherfucker.
Yeah,
you guys all talk the same way.
Whatever.
You guys have all these little, like cool little acronyms, and then you say it like we know, like, oh yeah, we're in dev group over here. Nobody knows what that means except you guys and all the nerds that read the books about you guys.
So there's this big symposium every year. It's a big trade show like this, but about 500 times bigger. And that's where they have all the tanks and the helicopters.
No
and all
shit.
that.
Oh, wow.
I was doing some consulting work there for guys who want to get into the health space for special forces. And the prices of these things are just...
I can't even imagine.
I'm sitting there just laughing. I'm going, how can a remote control helicopter cost $1 million?
So
explain
good.
that to me,
so
man.
Good. I'd love to go to...
they're cool.
The nerd in me, I want to go look at all that shit.
There's so much cool shit there. I'm walking around going, I want one of those. I want that. I want
I'll take that.
I want
Cool.
that. It would cost me like $50 million to buy everything I want.
So dope.
And I don't have a use for any of them, but they're really cool.
Don't even know where I'd keep them.
I don't even really know what that is, but it looks really cool. And I want that.
I'll take pictures with that.
Give me 2.
Do you like to be called Kirk or Dr. Parsley? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you still a practicing physician in that way?
Yeah.
Do you have your shingle out somewhere? Or
Aubrey
you
Marcus.
I don't have a shingle anymore. When I started the supplement company, Rob and I agreed I was going to be the CEO. I was going to run this thing. So I left clinical practice. I left like a brick and mortar practice, but I still carried about 20 consulting clients. So it's something in between a blend of being their health coach and being their doctor. So it's usually guys who've kind of fucked themselves up their whole lives, and now they just sold their company for $200 million, and they want to get back into the same shape they're in at 25 or something. And so I do an annual program with guys like that. But I grossly underestimated how much work this business would be. So it went from 20 to 10 to 5. But I still do that, and then I still treat. I still maintain sort of my the pulse of probably about 200 team guys.
Really?
Either active or veterans.
I got a question. I was meaning to ask, and this goes back to an earlier conversation probably, but while I've got your ear, I'd heard another doctor speak about traumatic brain injury
Mark Gordon probably on
I believe
show.
so. Yeah. And he was with a Ranger, I think, that was on there, a Delta Force guy.
Green Beret, I think.
And he'd said,
Delta. You're right.
He talked about what the guy had said was really interesting to me, in that he said my confidence was gone.
Yeah.
And I felt like a pussy all over the place. But I knew historically, because I'm a bad motherfucker and I've got this history, that wasn't true. And so when the feeling went away, and that was maybe a year or months, I'm not certain, but like he had this awakening kind of, and goes, no, historically I am a bad motherfucker. I'm just feeling this way. And when he had the distinction and was able to separate those two things, he goes, I need to get some help then. What is this? And that's when he sought out Dr. Gordon, I guess. And so how much of that are you seeing through, whether it's explosions or whether blunt force trauma, where that affects the thing and the guys need testosterone in their body, or is sleep a panacea?
Yeah, so I know Mark Gordon pretty well.
Okay.
While I was kind of learning to unravel this mess that the SEALs were having, I didn't understand. I actually went to one of his conferences, or a conference that he was speaking at, and he was speaking on TBI, and I had a known TBI case, so I'm like, I'll go check it out. And he starts throwing up his labs, which were very similar to my labs, and the lab values that his TBI clients had looked just like the SEALs. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, this is very familiar. And then I started doing my own research on TBI.
To interject, the reason that's important is this conversation ends in suicide for guys. That's where this goes.
Yeah. And a lot of other badness on the way.
Right. Like but the end game. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the guy you're talking about, Andrew Marr, and he has the Angel Warrior Foundation now.
Okay.
Which I'm on the advisory panel for that as well. But when I went to Mark Gordon's course, his lecture, and he starts throwing up all these cases, I'm like, man, that looks a lot like my guys. And so I cornered Mark after that, and we chatted for a while, and he's like, completely reinforcing the idea that that a lot of my SEALs problems could be TBI. So I start doing a bunch of research, and I find this JAMA article, which is like the premier medical journal. JAMA article, August 2009. I can't remember the exact label of it, but they did something called a DTI, where they can see a single neuron break. They can that kind of resolution. They look in your brain, see like this was fine, broke, and so they had a definitive TBI diagnosis, right? And so they took these healthy college kids, they did DTIs on them, and then they had them do stuff, and then they do DTIs, and they found that the threshold for getting a traumatic brain injury was the acceleration changes on a roller coaster, 1.2 Gs.
Wow.
So when we breach a door, 50, 60, 70 Gs. Machine gun fire inside of a concrete room, 30, 40, maybe
that's
50
awful.
Gs.
Can you imagine?
Being in a Humvee with a 50 cal going about 50, 60 Gs inside of that.
And again, what's the roller coaster?
1.2.
Fuck me.
Wow.
So I start looking at this. I'm like, well, I don't have a SEAL who doesn't have TBI, right? Like every one of them have TBI. They have hundreds of TBIs, and we have no idea what the consequences of that are. And if you think about it, this is the first war.
What's going to a rock concert?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Rock con? I don't know, but it's.
But
high.
I bet it's up there too,
high.
right?
Yeah,
if you jam out in your car. Anyway,
you'd have to somebody to convert the decibels on that, but I know it's over the threshold for sure. But if you think about this war compared to every other war in American history or the world's history, we now have equipment that can withstand way more than the people wearing or using the equipment. Our equipment is so damn dynamic. Like Dev Group's fast boats, badass boat, right? It's like amazing, kick-ass, love it. They transit at 60 Gs, like they're popping like this at 60 Gs. They peak over 100 Gs, and they're on these for hours. So it's like TBI, 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 TBI. And then, these guys come off the boats and they're like, man, I'm dizzy, I can't think,
sitting here with my mouth open right now.
It's just unbelievable. And so Mark Gordon put together a training course for doctors who are interested in helping vets with TBI, and he primarily the hormonal aspect of it. And so I just did that a few weeks ago. I just did one of his courses on that.
It's so crazy.
And we're
man.
trying to get like a couple of thousand doctors nationwide to be able to give these vets help, man, because a lot of these guys don't know what's wrong with them.
Why would you know? How would you know? You just been living hard, whatever.
Yeah, they just feel like I'm off. I can't tell you exactly what that means, but I don't feel great. And then that spirals into depression and self-doubt and anxiety. And then, like you said, the next thing you know, you're stuck starting your pistol, you know?
Yeah.
And
the self-doubt's got to be the worst, especially if you're active still.
Yeah.
Because then you're not, I mean, you know, if I've got to think about a movement before I make the movement, I'm too late for the fucking movement. And and if the consequences are steep enough, if you fight in a cage, whatever, so you get knocked out maybe, or you lose, or you're in a bad position. If you're in a fucking war and guys are counting you, people die then.
Yeah, and it's way worse that the other guy dies, right? I mean, it's
yeah. Then you live with that until you do kill yourself because you can't live with that.
Yeah, you're like, oh shit, I made that mistake,
man. Jesus,
I made a mistake. My buddy got shot right there in front of me. I could have saved his life had I not done that one thing. So now I'm even less confident.
Even just to get guys in the conversation, to get more doctors in that conversation has got to be. I mean, that's the battle in a way.
Yeah, and you know, and one of the big problems with it is the culture of the special forces as well, right?
Sure.
They're not good at being vulnerable. Like, it's very uncomfortable for them to, okay, here's everything, dude. It's all on the table.
Right.
Very hard to do. They're in an organization, you know, that prides itself on never being vulnerable, that always has the solution, always has an answer, always has a backup plan. We know what we're doing, we're directed.
Crazy.
And so you got to work on that as well. So it really takes, you know, something like I had with the SEAL teams. It was just this great fortuitous
You became the angel because you're one of them.
They knew me and they trusted me and they would come talk to me. And we need an organization that they can trust.
Right.
And so that kind of has to be spearheaded by someone. I was just having a conversation right before we did this podcast.
I'm looking at the guy.
And we had... You know, he was talking to me about wanting to build a program for vets to help them get off of chemical dependency. He has, you know, Iboga
theory. Yeah. My friend Scotty Nelson.
Yeah, gets people off of chemical dependencies. Like, I really want to work with the vets, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. And he started talking about, you know, some non-for-profits that he's working with, and I'm like, yeah, let me tell you, there's about 3,000 of those across America. There's all these treatments that help people. MRT helps, like a magnet around people's heads help. Transcranial ultrasounds helps. Neurofeedback helps. Float chambers help. Near IR helps. But none of that's medical. None of that's standard of care. So this all has to be done in outside clinics, which means it has to be funded by someone other than the vet, because he makes like $35,000 a year and he has 3 kids.
If he still does.
Yeah.
Even.
And, you know, so... you know, I told him, I said, there are at least 2,000 to 3,000 stovepipes in America all doing this. There are people all over America that are willing to give millions of dollars to help veterans, but nobody has brought it all together and said, like, here's the roof, man. Here's the roof of all of it, so that everybody can be aware. So the 25-year-old vet that's sitting over in Kentucky who's nowhere near any kind of military base or VA facility can get on the internet and start searching around for stuff and then find, hey, here's this organization that helps all vets with their problem. And then you can kind of start self-diagnosing and like picking out what are my problems, and it runs you down this pipeline. It's like, here you go, you need to talk to these guys. And what I tell doctors to do when they're complaining about how they can't help their patients, I say, well, find the technology that you want to use. You'll be able to find that, right? You get online and find a brain care facility, or somebody who does transcranial ultrasound, somebody who does MRT, or somebody who does neurofeedback, or whatever, acupuncture, whatever. You find that modality, and then you call that center and you say, do you have any veteran funding?
Right.
99.9% of the time, they'll say, yes, we have $5 million in the bank, and nobody's ever claimed a single dollar because nobody knows it's there.
Wow.
And the treatment facilities are everywhere too, and nobody knows they're there.
It's crazy.
Because there's no information pipeline.
There's no infrastructure.
It's voodoo.
It's almost like somebody needs to have a website that is directive like that.
Yeah.
I live in Spokane, and I have this, and I live in Tulsa, and here's these places, and
you know, we were talking about that at the Suffolk conference.
Right. Well, I could go help those guys out, you know, if they want to have me there.
Yeah.
that's that whole thing. It was tough. Like we as a company, my cousin's a Team 2 guy, and then like my uncle was the Force Recon, and there's like a lot of military. We got a lot of friends. Like Tim Kennedy's a good buddy of ours, and all these guys out there. Jared Shaw was active until a couple years ago, and Andy, of course, and
Stan,
and Brian Stan, yeah, and like so, like we're going. Well, I want to make a roast. I want to make a coffee that gives proceeds to what foundation, and to even look at where to give. And then Brian was super informative, Brian Stan, and going. There's so many that are out there that don't really serve guys, and he's like, I don't really know. I'm going to find out the most. And then, my cousin and Andy both are my cousin, he got shot and had to have his leg reconstructed. And he says the Navy SEAL Foundation did so much for our team.
Yeah.
They came in and they were real angels, and they helped, they helped guys with their families that were gone. And he says they cared for us, and they came to our homes and it's a really touching thing that they do, and so that became the avenue for us in who can we support, but how does one vet the good operations that are out there from? Is there a way? Even?
I wish I had I wish I had an easy answer for that. I would probably start by looking into the organizations that have already tried to solve this riddle. So do you guys know Mikhail Vega?
I don't.
He's a pretty big Hollywood guy now, and former SEAL. Had terrible TBI. One of the worst clients, or one of the worst patients I ever had as their doctor, and he just felt like they just threw him to the wolves, man. It's just like, we don't know what's wrong with you. Take all these pills. He didn't want to take all these pills, so he went out and started finding, therapies that he read about on the internet that might help. And so he settled out kind of on this program where he does, this Kundalini yoga, and he does his near IR booth, and he does float chambers a certain amount of time, and I think he does acupuncture or some body work or something.
I've been hearing about mushrooms as a thing.
Yeah, well, he's done all that. He went and did the shamanistic work with the DMT and all that type of stuff, and so he found this program that worked really well for him, and he started something called the Vital Warrior Organization, and it's a non-for-profit, and he's a guy who's lived through it. Andrew Marr's program, Angel Warrior Foundation, a guy who's lived through it. Yeah. He's found some things that work. The hormones that Mark Gordon does and Andrew are pushing are very, very important, but they're not 100% of the picture, right? It's a part of the picture, but it's not 100%. It's a multi-pronged
problem.
And you need to kind of cover everything. And so while I highly recommend, doctors go to that and get that training, you also need to learn about all these modalities that are popping up like literally every couple of months. There's a new kind of piece of equipment that we found will stimulate this region of the brain that's usually functioning low in somebody who has had a TBI, or shut this region down that's usually functioning too high in people with PTSD.
And it's all an individual thing, kind of, because your damage is maybe different. We don't even know if a concussive damage from a bomb is different than a concussive damage from a punch. We don't really know how that stuff affects, so I would imagine it's just like trial and error.
You really have to figure out what works for you. It's like working out. Everything works working out, but nothing works forever and nothing works for everybody, right? So you have to kind of figure out, what do I like to do? What actually works for me? What do I get great results from?
And then what would I stick with emotionally? Then all the stuff too.
And then once that goes away, I'll find something else, because once I'm not getting results from that anymore, I do something differently, right? Medical. I don't even like calling it medical care. It's like self-care, right? And my whole drive as a physician is to get away from this idea that physicians are in charge of health. Physicians don't know shit about health. We never got trained at all on health. We know about disease. We know how to treat disease and do procedures around disease. That's it. You want to be healthy, you need to be at a conference like this. You need to talk to coaches. You need to talk to mindset coaches and gym
I think
owners.
Also it's important when you do
nutrition coaches.
I just said you need to try a lot of things and figure out.
Food bringing you to health, what your diet is. But I think the thing is too, is you come to something like this, it's also like the confidence thing, and you're saying the hard part about, you're a SEAL and you're one of these high operating humans, or however you are. A lot of men are raised that way in America, that you're supposed to have confidence. You're supposed to know, and I think one of the biggest things is that you've got to be open to the idea that you don't know, and you've got to come with more questions than answers to whatever it is you're coming to.
Yeah. And I've been a young freaking testosterone-driven man before when I was much younger. Hopefully, I'm a little wiser now. And my favorite phrase is, "I don't know."
Yeah.
Like I don't. And actually, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole.
Really, really start educating yourself. You're like, I don't know anything, man. Like I thought
even the smartest guys in the world say that. I mean, the very smartest guys are like.
8 years ago, I thought I knew a lot about sleep because I had been studying sleep for a couple of years. I'm like, dude, I got this shit. I know it. Now, another 8 years of studying sleep, I'm like, I don't know a damn thing. Like, it's so freaking complex. There's so much stuff going on.
It's a beautiful
I can give you
thing.
some big, broad strokes, but there's all sorts of details that I don't know.
Well, I think that's what we do, right? Is we start down avenues. We go, okay, I don't know where I'm going, but it's important I pick a destination. So I go down towards that destination, and then other eventualities come up, and then, okay, the conversation's taking me this way. Then you get a new destination, and I mean, it's just, and that's why our community is so great, because I can't go down all the roads, but you're going down some, Lacey's going down some, Keith's going on, and then we all bring back these conversations. It's kind of like the way Greg Jackson runs the team back in Albuquerque, is that, like, he doesn't care if Cowboy goes out and trains over here or does this over there. He's like, yeah, do all that and then bring it back here, and then we all have a bigger conversation with which to look at this whatever problem it is. You know,
absolutely.
It's a really, I mean, in a true holistic community. You know,
and as long as you have to get the right people, right?
Certainly,
but. As long as you have an organization like this where everybody's kind of egos are off to the side, and they're willing to come up to you. I mean, like, how brilliant is Rob Wolf? But he'll come up to you and just be like, "Hey, man, that's really cool. I know nothing about that. Teach me something about that."
He's so open, man.
Yeah, and then that's kind of the personality. Like, he kind of drove a lot of this community to where that's who it attracts.
Yeah,
and you come here and it's great, man. Like, I have doctors come up to me who have 5 times more experience than me, going, man, that was brilliant what you were saying. I never thought about that before. That was so cool. Can you teach me more? And most doctors, if I walk in a hospital and start telling a doctor what I do, they'll be like, you fucking quack, get out of here. Like, get to security. This guy doesn't know anything. Ambien's the cure, right?
Right.
And to your point about the path, I never started out to be a sleep guy.
Right.
I started out to be the hormone guy. Like,
right?
I'm gonna repair the SEALs' hormones, but I can't give them hormones, but I can improve their sleep.
Yeah.
And talk about sleep and talk about hormone production during sleep. And then once they slept well, their free testosterone went up 500%. And now they're like, oh, I've improved their. So they let me lecture about sleep and talk about hormones, but I couldn't lecture about hormones
to talk about
and
sleep.
talk about sleep.
Exactly.
That wasn't going to happen.
That's how we put ourselves.
So it just. And then it forced me to not give people testosterone because I couldn't do it.
Right.
So it forced me to figure out other ways to help people besides just sleep. And so now I have all sorts of protocols to help people make more of their own testosterone instead of getting it from outside in.
Right.
And it seemed like a total hamstring, like cock shot that I couldn't do what I knew needed to be done.
Right.
And it turned out to be a total blessing.
And that's
like it shaped me into this guy who now has his alternative view.
I think that's the thing too. Like, we get a lot of people that ask, like, how do you do this? How do you be successful at that or whatever? But it's like, all I hear is they tell you a series of what you can't do.
Yeah.
And so a lot of guys go, fuck, can't do it? And instead of that, it's like, no, man, like that whole, I love that phrase, just because there's a goalie doesn't mean you can't score.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, they're telling you, no, okay, I can't do it that way. Well, I still have to solve the problem.
Right.
I still have to go to this place. So they're telling me not through this door. What doorway is available?
Right.
And what a beautiful thing, and that resiliency you have, you know?
Yeah.
Fuck, that's so cool, man.
It was a great experience, and as much as I hated it at the time, and like they literally like big Bureau of Medicine Navy came crashing down on me.
I bet.
Yeah, like they were all over me for being a quack.
Yeah.
You know what this is the first thing they got really pissed off at me about is I was given 6,000 IUs of vitamin D3, and they told me I was going to kill everybody with that.
Really?
I'm like, really? Can you show me some literature on that? Can you prove that?
When
and they're talking about vitamin D toxicity, vitamin D toxicity. Okay. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I don't know something. So I get on there, I look up vitamin D toxicity. 2 cases in the history of America, all medical literature, 2 cases. Both guys were taking 2.5 million units every night for 6 months.
Right.
And you know what their toxicity was? They had a headache and their belly hurt. And then they had to quit taking vitamin D, and a few days later they felt fine. Oh yeah, I'm really scared.
Hysteria and fear, man.
But,
when they
but I can give them Ambien and Viagra and Lexapro, and like.
But we don't want to be preventative. We want to be.
And I'm sitting there going, I'm like, okay, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm not an endocrinologist, but I guarantee you, this guy does not have insomnia because of an Ambien deficiency. That's not. Might be a testosterone deficiency.
Maybe something else going on.
And he's not depressed because he has a Prozac deficiency. It's stupid.
We have a really good friend that's been trying to get off pharmaceuticals.
All of a sudden, all my Prozac levels went down as I got older, and I just got to take
and shrunk.
Fuck me, man. That's the funniest way I've ever heard it. Nobody had an Ambien deficiency.
Our friend that's been trying to get off of pharmaceuticals, it's been prescribed 1,000 different
4
things.
4 years now?
And they keep saying, like some doctors he'll go to, and they'll be like, well, no, you need to get back on them because now you're low and like all this stuff. And there's some things that they say that you actually start taking, you can't stop taking because you mess up your system.
He's on Paxil.
You have to get past it.
Yeah.
And so he's been 4 years. He's gone to zero. He goes into zero, into these black holes, like he calls it brain fog, or I guess that's a term for it. But he goes into these horrific lulls, and he's like, Tait, I can't really explain it. You would never understand what it is like. And he's been suffering. He's a sober guy. No booze, no drugs. He CrossFits every day. And I was like, maybe it's hormonal. Maybe that'll help. He's like, I'd do anything. He's on message boards. He's like, and after like 2.5 years, he goes, I had a good day, man. I could think clearly through the day, and it was awesome. And then the next day he'll crash out or whatever. But there's no doctors that are having a cogent discussion about how he can get better.
Yeah, well, it depends on who you go to.
Dan Kalish?
Dan Kalish.
Is he in San Diego? Because that's where Tim is.
I don't know where he's at, actually. But he does... I think he's a naturopath. I can't remember his credentials, but he has an entire training program about reoptimizing neurotransmitters.
Cool.
And all sorts of ways to test it through urine and blood and saliva.
Is it Kalish?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a thing too, like, when you have an injury, if you go see, the surgeon, they're going to want to operate on you. If you go see the chiropractor,
when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Exactly. So it's like this thing where you have to actually educate yourself. We have this whole pirate life thing, and people are saying, what is that? And we say, well, pirate your life back. You want to be a renegade a little bit. I tell my mom, if I keep going to the doctor, they're going to keep prescribing the same thing because those are the tools that they're allowed to use. But if I go see this other person, they might tell me something different. Or if I go see this person and until I can prove what works for me or that condition, then I shouldn't just keep going back to the same thing because it's not the solution.
And a really reasonable place to start is what everyone here talks about. How did you evolve, right? What's our body designed to do? Let's try that first.
Yeah.
And then see what, fleshes out after that.
Yeah.
And it makes way more sense than saying, oh, that symptom can be covered by this pill, so let's give you that
Let's just do that, yeah.
And then the next symptom will be covered by another pill. And then, you get 5 or 6 pills on board. I don't care how smart you think you are. You can't figure out what the hell is going on when...
now it's not a human body situation. It's like a weird...
pharmacological problem.
Frankenstein
situation. Everything. You
created a cesspool for pharmacological...
everything's aberrant. Like we learn the body in systems as a way to learn it because it's convenient. The body doesn't work in systems.
No.
Right.
The body works all at once. Everything's going all at once. Everything affects everything else.
About all of it.
I thump your ear, it does something to your kidney. I mean, everything is
the
involved.
problem when we start to think we know too is like, and in medicine it gets that way. Is like cholesterol. And when we start to go, okay, well, cholesterol was the first marker that we could pull out and look at and study and quantify in blood.
Right.
And so then cholesterol is a problem in heart disease because it was present during that. There's no correlation, no causation. And then we got guys on statins that has real problems and really kills people and really damages people. And then, as it turns out, everybody that has Alzheimer's doesn't have any cholesterol in their brain.
They
and
might need
et cetera,
that.
et cetera. So we look at that, or like mother's milk, and we go, oh, well, it's made up these macronutrients. supplements. We'll just mimic that and give it to babies. Well, we don't think enzymatically. We don't think of any of the things that the mother has been emboldening herself about her environment that transmit. And so,
and how arrogant is it to think that we can outsmart?
Oh, nature didn't provide that. We
thousands
can.
of years of evolution and just go, oh, dude, we got it from here.
Truly.
We're smarter than our bodies. We're smarter than our minds. We're smarter than the universe. We got it from here. Yeah, it completely pisses me off that, and I hate the term hack. Everybody's talking about hack.
Just talk to assistant, and he was like the same thing.
Let's do this where let's hack this. Let's hack. Like, you know who the original hack was? Pharma. Right?
Yeah.
They said, oh, well, you're hurting over here. This process is going on. We can give you this pill. It'll block that.
Yep.
Solve the issue, right? It got rid of your symptom. That's a hack.
Yeah.
What should you do? You should, all right, well, let me work on how I eat, how I sleep, how I exercise, how I control my stress.
Let me become a professional human.
Yeah.
How about that?
Let me work
How about
on
I learn how to
my
operate
lifestyle.
this system?
Yeah. And then do an N of 1. Figure out what works for me. Because I don't like acupuncture. I've had acupuncture.
I hate it.
It doesn't really do anything for me. I don't really like it.
And I don't like it because sometimes it goes zing and goes through my whole body. I'm like, motherfucker, now I feel like hitting you.
But some people...
You're a nice lady.
some people, that's the magic sauce for them, man.
Yeah.
It's like, they get a needle
I know
put
people that
right
have been
back here.
cured.
It's like, I've had a headache for 17 years and it's gone in 5 seconds.
Yep.
So, I mean, you just got to figure out what works for you. And all these modalities that are a couple of thousand years old, you should probably trust that. I mean, come on.
Right.
It wouldn't be 2,000 years old.
not a fact.
People don't talk about meditation because it's hooey.
Right.
Like it hasn't...
Even all this hoopla about, DMT is a Schedule 1 drug. It's the same as having heroin in the United States, right? But shamans have been using DMT for like 5,000 years, man, and it works, and we know it works, and there's all these prejudice around. It's just stupid, man.
It's all we don't know. Well, it's like also it's keeping things alive because the system's already in place, right? And so, in a way, commerce and capitalism, it's great, and I think it's fantastic if it's tempered with heart and with humanity in mind. But like a lot of things stop evolution. Like the oil and gas has stopped evolution. We've stopped evolving because this has become such a huge monolith that it just overshadows, and they'll kill people or they'll stop that from, sorry, there's no electric car. This is the only kind of power source we need. And even though we see that is harmful to maybe the planet or whatever, and I like a big gas guzzling car as much as the next guy, but my point being that a lot of times after a system goes, oh, this is it, we're too slow to push away that old system to adopt new innovation.
Yeah. So do you drive a Toyota Clitoris?
No, I don't. There's nobody that talks more shit about it. I have a Tacoma and it was surrounded. I was at the gym and there's fucking 2 Priuses behind me and 1 in front, and I take a picture and I'm like, how unlovely is this? And then one of the guys that owns a Prius goes, Prius gangbang. I'm like, you motherfucker.
If you drive in a car with Tait in LA and it's just like he counts the Priuses and he's just like, there's one, and he gets more and more.
So mad. I really don't like. And you know what I do love though? Like that's also a pussy car.
That's it's a bad.
Here's the deal. The difference is that those are some guys that sold out. Toyota Prius, you're a little bitch. You sold out if you bought one. It's not to save the environment. It's because you're a pussy and you can't fucking make more than, it'll save me $20 in gas when I fill it. Go kill yourself, you dummy. That's so shit.
Yeah.
The thing that I was going to say Nikola Tesla, the thing that Elon Musk did is he remained at state of standard on his. And there was a point in his company when they go, hey, we could do a hybrid. And he goes, that's not what this is. He says, that ruins the whole idea of it. It needs to be 100% electric. Yeah. The man's a G, man. That dude, that's a guy pushing innovation.
Right.
There's a difference. If you think you drive a Prius and that is like being, you're fucking wrong, man. That's a different conversation. Well, and to not have discernment about which is which makes you dumb.
And your point right there is really strong for the whole entrepreneurial thing. Is like you have to stick to your guns and live your vision. Yep. And maybe your vision doesn't turn out to be right. You're like,
sure.
I mean, Tesla lost to Edison, right? It was like it screwed over the whole fucking country for a long time.
A marketing realm.
Yeah,
really.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I love about this guy. There's a guy next to us here in this booth, Paleo Pharmacy. And that's a dude that's been in this kind of paleo realm before there was a name paleo for it. He's been doing this and doing his, the weird tinctures and this and that and whatever for all this time. And then finally he's like, oh my God, finally now there's a conversation going on that speaks to what I've been doing. Whereas, 10 years ago, people are looking at him like he's a quack, and now he's grown into this. Him versus the guys that are like, how could I get a product to get into this thing? You know what I mean? It's a huge difference in consciousness.
Everybody's making money off of this.
Exactly
Let's
right.
do that
exactly
too.
Right. Somebody just hit me up on Instagram about some kind of keto whatever that was exogenous ketones. That's an MLM now. Those bastards, those cancerous MLMs, they'll jump on whatever it is. I mean, it's just about a money grab as opposed to like, I'm just trying to get good stuff to people, Yeah.
The only reason to be an entrepreneur is because you have a passion, right?
It's true.
Like, I have something I have to get out there, and if I fail, I don't give a shit because it's what I'm meant to do. It's what I want to do. It's my goal.
We're learning. I mean, we don't make any money off of anything that we do really that is in this realm. Lacey and Keith and myself. But it's fun, and we're learning a lot on the way, and what we're learning is going to serve us to become better. The whole life is sharpening the sword, and if you're not learning and sharpening the sword all the way through, you're never going to be ready when the real thing hits, when that real thing comes to you. And so that's the thing, is just be in love with doing it. I mean, I always look at like Keith and Floyd Sword and Joey Villaseñor and all these guys that were around when I started fighting, and it was all just a love of the game kind of thing at that time. Nobody had any money. It was just like, I wonder who I am under this kind of pressure, and I wonder who I would be if I wonder if I could exact my art here. Like, I started fighting with the Dog Brothers, and it was just a thing like, I wonder when a stick's buzzing by my head, like what that's like. And the way they started was, everybody said, like your vitamin D story, everybody said, oh, you'd die if you get hit with a stick like that or whatever. And they're like, really? Well, let's see. And Arlen Sanford and Eric Knaus then took off all the armor and they banged with sticks for a while, and they found out that they're still alive, 30 years later or whatever. And it's just like, let's find out, because we're all just experiments, And to speak to the drug thing that you're talking about, I heard, God, it's Dan something, I forget his last name, McKenna, right? And it was Terrence McKenna's brother. I think it's Dan. Anyway, he was a big DMT proponent and all that, and ayahuasca, like whatever. But the thing he said, people take mushrooms and they have these awakenings or whatever. They do X, Y, or Z. And he said, and everybody would say, though, that epiphany that you had was not real because it's drug-induced, And I used to think, I was like, well, there's credence to that. There's a lot of veracity to that argument. And then right behind that statement, he says, but all we are is this carbon shell that's made up of drugs. You're endorphin, you're adrenaline, you're dopamine.
We're just a big bag of hormones and neurotransmitters,
bag of drugs that are merging together.
Switching those around, and you're not the same person anymore, right? So
it all speaks to the thing. It's not like jump in unconsciously, but there's a huge conversation in there that to be available to, I think, is important.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I tell people this about sleep all the time. You sleep deprive yourself enough, you change the way your brain functions. You're a different person.
Sure.
You're a totally different person. We've all seen, I'm sure you guys have, known guys that were totally aggro and crazy, and then they went and worked with a shaman for a few weeks and started doing some stuff, and then you came back and you're like, look,
my friend Brian
Simmons, totally different man. Why is he different?
Brian started a Grappler's Quest. Brian Simmons.
What's in his brain?
And then he was going to jump off a bridge, and he's like, and then he went and he found a guy. He started going on these trips, and ayahuasca sorted him out in that way, and now he's a different benefit to his world.
Yeah, and you can easily make the opposing argument. This is just, this meat suit is all a social construct, and this might not be reality, and the drug-induced state might actually be the reality. Right? You're in touch with the whole universe. That's probably the truth.
Yeah.
We're just like fluctuations of energy, but this is how we interact through our meat suits right now, right?
I think regardless of it too, like whatever that thing is, the thing that's exciting to me is that the consciousness of the world in that conversation is shifting in the people are drinking and using drugs for forever to get away from themselves.
Yeah.
And now people are talking about using these different plant medicines and
find
things
themselves.
to get closer to themselves, man. To get to seek
powerful.
a truth.
I never
and that's
thought of that.
fucking beautiful, man.
It's a great way of saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
we got all these people to go look at. I'm sure you got to get back to your booth.
I probably should go shop some product,
Dr.
man.
Parsley, thank you, or Kirk, thank you for coming, and I really want to continue this conversation for sure.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Thank you, Lacey and Keith, for being here, man. Where can people find out about you? And
DocParsley.com. Everything you want to know about
DOC,
me.
right? Not DR.
Yeah, DocParsley.com.
And that's an EY. And on Instagram, anything like that? You mess with
I'm
that
on
stuff?
Twitter at Doc Parsley. Instagram,
It's like I'm a full-grown man. I don't do that stuff.
I got a 19-year-old girl doing it for me, but no. I actually do Twitter myself. Everything else is kind of managed for me, so that's probably the one. If you really want to hit me with something quick, I'll respond on that.
If you want to train at the best place in San Diego, where do you go?
I go to Victory.
Okay.
I like Victory.
Okay.
I mean, rolling. I'm pretty tight with Dean, and I get to roll with Dean. I'm like,
how badass is that? I only rolled with him one time ever.
Got, Jeff Glover there, Chris Levin there, Jocko's there, Sarge's there.
How's Chris doing?
There's a ton of badass guys there, man.
Chris is doing good?
Yeah, Chris is doing really well. He's teaching like the MMA stuff there.
Good. Last I'd heard he was in Hawaii.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't.
That was probably 6 years ago, though.
Oh no, it's definitely sooner than that. I haven't trained in probably like 6 months there, but he was there last time I was there, and he'd been there for about a year and a half. So
I think it's important to say too about that, like in training. I don't know whatever it's, but like the thing is a lot of people maybe listening are like, I've been meeting a lot of people since I've been doing the podcast, and they're all like that it's like a foreboding thing, like and you hear, now Jocko's become super popular since he wrote his book, and Dean, of course, is a legend, and Dean doesn't have any knack at all to speak of. He's a gorilla of a human, and you see guys like this, but and like what a great place to train is. And like when I hear that, I've just got to say to people what I think that means, because what most people that don't know think that means is that they're the most savage, baddest motherfucker, like, and maybe that's true, but like the thing is that makes it a good place to be is that they are tempered professional humans that are also the kindest, and nobody's in that business, nobody's in that gym, nobody's in that doing jiu-jitsu unless they have an innate need to care and to help other people along their journey in that way. And I've never found a more kind group of people than inside fight gyms.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And people just looking to be helpful.
Everybody's so cool, so helpful. You go into any other kind of fitness community, it's all about competition.
Yeah.
You go into there, it's like, I don't give a shit if I win.
Oh, you want to learn?
Go to win. It's like if some little dude snakes something around and gets me, I'm like, dude, that was badass.
Yeah.
Show me how you did that.
And how cool are people?
I don't care. I'm not trying to.
It's like that.
Not for
if
money.
you find somebody that wants to learn, and because not a lot of people want to do that, it's a brave thing just to walk in the room, and they go, "Oh, I'd like to learn this." You're like, oh, right on, come on. I mean, and they're careful with you.
The other thing that scares people is fucking humiliating, right? Because these big brawly guys who think they're badasses, and they've done something in their life, whatever. They get in there and it's like they're getting whipped like a 5-year-old girl by a 120-pound
and that's
Asian
the thing.
dude. And
no big deal to get killed by Jocko or by Keith Jardine or something like that. Whatever. There's no shame in that, of course. Those guys are killers.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Cade Nelson, like Scotty's brother that he was talking about, 130 pounds, and that dude will cut your head off with a guillotine or a rear naked. Like those guys, the best jiu-jitsu guy, Jeff Gulliver. He doesn't look like a badass, but believe me, you know what I mean?
Jeff Glover's there too.
And it's like there's these little nerdy dudes that are just killers.
Here's the most humiliating or humbling, not humiliating, but most humbling jiu-jitsu story of my life. So I'm like a 20-year white belt, right? I just, dabble. Right. I never trained any place consistently. Trained a lot with the teams. I actually started under Hickson. My first private lesson was under Hickson Gracie.
Killer.
Like in early 90s. I think I only did like 2 lessons with him, but I was like, this is cool, I want to learn it. And then, college, and I took but anyways, when I was doing my hyperbaric residency up in Connecticut, and I'd been rolling really regularly. I'd been like in a year, whereas like I'd been consistent for a year, and I'm like, I'm not losing this. And so I go to Connecticut, and the nearest gym to me is in Rhode Island. This guy named Tim Burrell. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's like the first American. Is it Machado?
Yep.
Jiu-Jitsu. And he was great at concepts. And I'd come from like a really traditional Brazilian one, or they're just kind of, well, you'll feel it. Just enough time on the mat.
Right.
And he's like,
and he'd tell you what to look for. He's just like,
bam, here's the concept.
Yep.
So I roll in the first night I roll in his class. I swear to God, I roll with a 95-year-old woman, like 19-year-old, 20-year-old woman, and I could not submit her to save my life. She was just like a Gumby doll. Like everything I did, she had some way to get out of it. And of course, she couldn't submit me because I could just like, throw her off me. But I'm like, why in the hell can I not submit this girl? And I was exhausted when it was over. I'm like,
I think it's the most powerful martial art because of that.
I think so too.
And if you're a woman, people are gonna.
It's so cool. It's like playing chess with your body, man.
It really
it's like
is,
it's so interesting to know that if you just do this instead of that, you're screwed. Right? Like, how cool is that, man? Like I think it's so fascinating.
And it's the thing that everybody innately wants to do. I mean, you go to any reunion or like take your kids to Thanksgiving and all the little kids like to wrestle. Yeah. Boys, girls, everybody. That's all they do. They're like the roughhouse like that.
Yeah.
And it's neat to.
It's built into us for sure, man.
Sure
we
is.
need to be physical, and that's a great way to do it. And you just if you go to the right gym and you roll with you're the right guys, right. Like, I only roll with old guys. I don't roll with any 22-year-old guy who wants to win at all costs.
Nobody trying to go to the Pan Ams or something.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not rolling with you, even if we're on par, because you're going to spaz and try to win no matter what.
Yeah.
And you're going to, like, kick me in the nose or something.
You get an elbow across. And, oh, great, now I got a gash in my eye.
Yeah, I roll with a bunch of 40 and 50-year-old dudes like me, and just kind of like, whatever. Let's get it. And I'm tired. I'm going to take a break.
There's the one thing, man, and I hate to keep you, but quickly about hyperbaric chambers. I don't know if you can quickly do it. I didn't realize that much study would need to go into it. You said you studied for a year specifically towards that end?
No, so it was a dive medicine residency. It was technically, I think actually it's only like 9 months, but I was gone for a year because of pre and whatever. But it was undersea medicine in the Navy is diving and submarines, so I had to learn all the nuclear physics and all the crap around radiation.
Wow.
And so I had to do that part too, which sucked. But then I got to go down to Panama, Florida, and go back through dive school. 20 years after I'd gone through SEAL training, so it was a hell of a lot easier than SEAL training. But it was kind of cool to get back into it and do some real military stuff.
Cool, man. I look forward to seeing you again.
Likewise, man.
DocParsley.com.
DocParsley.com, yeah.
And at Doc Parsley on Twitter and Instagram. Lacey.Mackey on Instagram.
Yep. And LMackey31 on Twitter still, because I can't figure out how to change that. The Jardine.
CavemanCoffee.com. Keith Jardine 205. Not .com. I guess that's a .com too, isn't it?
Should be.
That's been a dead site for years. Yeah. Keith Jardine 205 on Instagram and Twitter.
What's the 205?
205 pounds.
Yeah.
He fought at 185, and everybody on Twitter was like, "Hey, bro, are you going to change your Twitter?" Shut up, nerd. I'm taitimusmaximus on Snapchat, and you can find me at Tait Fletcher everywhere else. Thank you all for listening, and have a great day.